The cave smelled of wet stone and ancient secrets. Riley Dawson stood in the flickering torchlight, 15 years old, her face streaked with mud and dried blood from a cut on her cheek. Before her, a wooden chest lay open, gold coins gleaming like captured starlight against the darkness. And across from her, Senator William Crane held a pistol aimed directly at her heart. He was 62 years old, silver hair slicked back even now. Even after crawling through collapsed tunnels and fighting through the wilderness, his suit was torn, his face bruised, but his eyes burned with the cold fire of a man who had waited 35 years for this moment. "Your father took everything from my family," Crane said, his voice echoing off the cave walls. "Now I take it back." Riley did not flinch. In her hand, she clutched a leather journal, its pages yellowed with age, its contents worth more than all the gold in that chest. "You want this?" She held the journal higher. "Shoot me, but you will never find what remains." Behind Crane, movement in the shadows. A figure emerging from the darkness. A man Riley had believed dead for 15 years. Her father, Nathan Dawson. The screen went black. White text appeared against the void, 72 hours earlier. Blue Ridge Mountains, North Carolina. 5:47 in the morning. The forest swallowed sounds the way deep water swallows stones, quietly, completely, without mercy. Riley Dawson did not know precisely when she realized she was alone. One moment there were footsteps behind her on the trail, the crunch of boots on wet leaves, the occasional cough from Uncle Greg, the whispered conversation between her aunt and the stranger in the black jacket. The next moment, silence. Not the comfortable silence of an empty room. This was the silence of abandonment, the silence of a door closing forever, the silence that settles over a place when everyone who matters has deliberately walked away. She stopped on the trail, her hiking boots sinking slightly into mud, still soft from yesterday's rain. The morning air pressed against her skin, cold and damp, carrying the scent of pine needles and rotting leaves and something else, something that smelled like fear. "Hello?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Aunt Martha? Uncle Greg?" Nothing answered except the wind moving through the treetops far above. Riley turned in a slow circle, scanning the forest in every direction. Trees, more trees, endless columns of pine and oak stretching toward a gray sky that promised rain before nightfall. No trail markers, no signs, no indication of which direction led back to civilization. And no people. They had brought her here in the darkness before dawn. No explanation, no breakfast, just a rough hand shaking her awake and a voice telling her to get dressed. They were going camping. Camping. That was the word Aunt Martha used. As if this were a family outing. As if they had not driven for 2 hours into increasingly remote wilderness. As if the stranger in the black jacket, the one who never spoke and never smiled, were simply a friend along for the adventure. Riley had known something was wrong from the moment she opened her eyes. She had felt it in the way Aunt Martha avoided looking at her directly, in the way Uncle Greg's hands trembled on the steering wheel, in the way the stranger watched her through the rearview mirror with eyes that calculated rather than observed. But what could she do? She was 15 years old. She had no money, no phone, no one to call, even if she did. Her mother had been dead for 7 years. Her father had vanished before that, disappeared when she was still young enough to believe he might come back someday. She had learned long ago that children like her did not get to ask questions. They got passed from relative to relative like unwanted furniture. They got fed and clothed and occasionally remembered on birthdays. They got survival, not love. And now apparently they got abandoned in the wilderness to die. The realization hit her slowly, then all at once. She was not lost. She had been left. Riley sank down onto a fallen log, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Her hands shook. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps that fogged in the cold mountain air. Last night, the phone call, she had been lying in bed, pretending to sleep, when she heard Aunt Martha talking to someone in the living room. The words had floated through the thin walls of the old farmhouse. Fragments of a conversation that made no sense at the time. "Yes, sir, we will bring her to the exact location. No, she does not suspect anything. The money will be transferred after confirmation. No one will find her. The forest will take care of the rest." The forest will take care of the rest. Riley had told herself she misheard, had convinced herself it was about something else, someone else, anything other than what it sounded like, because the alternative was too horrible to accept. The alternative meant that the only family she had left, the people who were supposed to protect her, had sold her to someone for money, had sold her to die. She pressed her palms against her eyes until colors burst behind her lids. She would not cry. Crying was useless. Crying was what weak people did when they had given up, and Riley Dawson had not survived 15 years of being unwanted by giving up. Think, she told herself, think like Dad taught you. The memory surfaced unbidden. Her father, before he disappeared, had been a soldier. Special forces, though he never talked about the details. What he did talk about, during those early years when Riley was still small enough to sit on his lap, was survival. How to find water by following animal trails downhill. How to determine direction by the moss on tree trunks in the position of the sun. How to build a shelter from fallen branches. How to start a fire with nothing but friction and patience. How to stay alive when everything around you wanted you dead. She had been 5 years old when he taught her these things, playing in the backyard, pretending they were explorers in an uncharted wilderness. She remembered his laugh, deep and warm. She remembered the way he would ruffle her hair and call her his little survivor. Then one morning he was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just an empty chair at the breakfast table and her mother crying in the kitchen and a hole in Riley's life that had never healed. For 10 years, she had believed he abandoned her because she was not worth staying for, because she was somehow defective, because she had failed some test she did not even know she was taking. Now, alone in a forest that seemed determined to swallow her whole, Riley clung to those survival lessons like a lifeline. Whatever else her father had been, whatever reasons he had for leaving, he had given her the tools to stay alive. She would not waste them. Riley stood up from the fallen log and forced herself to assess her situation. No food, no water, no supplies of any kind. She was wearing jeans, a thin hoodie, and hiking boots that were already starting to rub blisters on her heels. In her pocket, a folding knife she had swiped from Uncle Greg's toolbox 3 months ago, kept hidden ever since because something in her gut told her she might need it someday. That gut feeling had saved her life, or at least given her a fighting chance. She looked up at the sky, trying to gauge direction from the weak light filtering through the clouds. East. The sun rose in the east, which meant she turned slowly, orienting herself. The trail they had been walking ran roughly north to south. If she headed east, she would eventually hit a road. Probably, maybe. Or she would walk deeper into the wilderness until exhaustion and exposure killed her. Neither option seemed particularly appealing. Riley chose east anyway. Standing still meant certain death. Moving meant possibility, however slim. She started walking. 3 hours into her journey, Riley stopped beside a small stream to drink. The water was cold enough to make her teeth ache, but it was clean and clear and the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. She cupped her hands and drank until her stomach sloshed, then splashed some on her face to wash away the grime and the dried tracks of tears she refused to acknowledge. As she knelt there catching her breath, her mind drifted to Ranger, her dog, her best friend, the only creature in the world who had ever loved her without conditions or expectations. She had found him 3 years ago at an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of Asheville. A German Shepherd puppy, barely 8 weeks old, stuffed into a cardboard box and left beside a rusted fuel pump. Someone had written "free" on the box in black marker, but Riley suspected that was optimistic. The puppy was meant to die there, just like she was meant to die here. Instead, she had picked him up, tucked him inside her jacket, and carried him home. Aunt Martha had complained about the cost of dog food. Uncle Greg had grumbled about the mess. But Riley had worked odd jobs, mowed lawns, babysat neighborhood kids, done whatever it took to earn the money to keep Ranger fed and healthy. And Ranger had repaid her with a loyalty so fierce, it sometimes made her chest ache. He slept at the foot of her bed every night. He walked beside her to school every morning. He was there when she came home, tail wagging, eyes bright with uncomplicated joy. 3 nights ago, someone had left the back door open during a thunderstorm. Ranger had bolted into the darkness, terrified by the lightning, and had not come back. Riley had searched for hours, calling his name until her throat was raw. She had walked every street in the neighborhood, posted flyers on every telephone pole, begged everyone she met for information. No one had seen him, no one cared. Aunt Martha had shrugged when Riley told her Ranger was missing. "He was just a dog," she said. "You will get over it." Just a dog, as if Ranger had not been the only living thing that made Riley feel like she mattered. as if losing him had not torn a hole in her heart that nothing could fill. Now kneeling beside this stream in the middle of nowhere, Riley understood. They had gotten rid of Ranger on purpose. They did not want him following her into the forest. They did not want any witnesses to what they were doing. They had taken everything from her, and then they had left her here to die. Riley wiped her mouth and stood up, pushing the grief down into the place where she kept all the feelings she could not afford to examine. Later, she would mourn later, assuming she survived long enough to have a later. She continued east, climbing over fallen logs, pushing through underbrush that grabbed at her clothes and scratched at her exposed skin. The forest grew denser as she walked, the trees older and taller, their canopy blocking out more and more of the gray sky above. By midday, she was exhausted. Her legs trembled with every step. The blisters on her heels had burst, and each footfall sent sharp pains shooting up her ankles. Her stomach growled constantly, a reminder that she had not eaten since dinner the night before. But she kept moving, because stopping meant dying, and Riley Dawson was not ready to die. Late in the afternoon, she found something that did not belong. A rope. It lay half buried under a tangle of moss and fallen branches, weathered and frayed but unmistakably placed there by human hands. Riley stopped, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs. Someone had been here. She knelt beside the rope, examining it with trembling fingers. Old, yes, but not ancient. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20. And it led somewhere, disappearing into a dense patch of undergrowth that looked impenetrable from a distance, but revealed a narrow path when she pushed closer. Riley hesitated. Every survival instinct screamed at her to keep moving east, to find the road, to get out of this forest as quickly as possible. But another instinct, older and deeper, whispered that this rope was important, that whatever lay at the end of it might mean the difference between life and death. She followed the rope. It led her through a maze of vegetation, past a fallen tree whose trunk was wider than she was tall, across a small clearing carpeted with ferns and wildflowers. And then, just when she was about to give up and turn back, she saw it. A cabin, not on the ground, in the trees. Built between two massive pines raised 15 feet off the forest floor on a framework of weathered beams and thick branches, sat a structure that looked like something out of a fever dream. Walls made of interlocking logs and planks, so aged they had turned the same gray as the bark around them. A roof covered in moss and lichen. Small square windows, dark and empty. A rope ladder hung from the entrance, swaying gently in the breeze. Riley stood at the base of that ladder for a long moment, staring up at the tree cabin with her mouth hanging open. This was not a child's playhouse. This was a real structure, built with purpose and skill, designed to be hidden from anyone who did not know exactly where to look. Who had built this and why? She grabbed the ladder and tested it with her weight. The ropes creaked, but held firm. Before she could talk herself out of it, Riley climbed. The interior of the cabin smelled like cedar and dust and forgotten time. Riley stood just inside the entrance, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light filtering through the small windows. The space was perhaps 12 feet square, cramped but surprisingly organized. A narrow cot against one wall, its blanket folded with military precision. A wooden desk beneath a window, papers scattered across its surface as if someone had left in a hurry. Shelves lined every available wall space, crammed with jars and books and metal tins and tools she did not recognize. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. Everything except one thing. In the center of the room, resting on a wooden crate like a sacred artifact, sat a chest. It was small enough for Riley to lift, perhaps 2 feet long and 1 foot wide, made of dark polished wood carved with intricate swirling patterns that seemed to shift and move in the uncertain light. Unlike everything else in the cabin, this chest looked pristine, untouched by age or weather, as if time itself had agreed to leave it alone. Riley approached slowly, her footsteps creaking on the old floorboards. Her heart hammered in her chest. Something deep inside her whispered that opening this chest would change everything. Not just her terrible day, not just her abandoned morning, but her entire life. She knelt before the chest. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the lid. The wood felt warm beneath her touch, warmer than it should have been in this cold forest cabin. Almost alive. She lifted the lid. Gold. Dozens of coins, maybe hundreds, gleaming even in the weak forest light. They lay nestled in soft cloth like sleeping treasures, catching every stray ray of illumination and throwing it back in warm yellow reflections. Riley's breath caught. Her hand moved without conscious thought, picking up a single coin and holding it before her eyes. It was heavy, heavier than she expected, and cold at first, but warming quickly against her palm. The face of the coin showed a design she did not recognize, old and worn but clearly valuable. This was real gold, real treasure, worth more money than Riley had ever imagined, let alone seen. What was it doing here? Who had left it? And why had no one come back for it in what appeared to be decades? A sound from behind her shattered the silence. Footsteps on the rope ladder, someone climbing up. Riley spun around, the gold coin still clutched in her fist, her other hand reaching for the knife in her pocket. Her heart slammed against her ribs hard enough to hurt. She was trapped. One entrance now blocked. No way out. A shadow filled the doorway. Then a figure stepped into the cabin, and Riley found herself face to face with a stranger. He was old, 60 at least, maybe more, with silver hair cropped short in a military cut and a face that looked like it had been carved from weathered stone. A scar ran down his left cheek from temple to jaw, pale and puckered against his tan skin. His eyes were sharp, assessing, the eyes of a man who had seen combat and survived. But there was no threat in his posture, no aggression. He simply stood there, blocking the exit, watching her with an expression that mixed surprise with something that almost looked like recognition. "Easy there," he said, his voice low and calm. "I am not here to hurt you." Riley did not lower her knife. "Who are you?" The man raised his hand slowly, palms out, showing he was unarmed. "My name is Jack Thornton, and if I am not mistaken, you are Riley Dawson." The sound of her own name hit her like a physical blow. "How do you know who I am?" Jack Thornton lowered his hands and leaned against the doorframe, his posture deliberately casual, non-threatening. "Because I knew your father, Nathan Dawson. We served together a long time ago." Riley's world tilted. "My father is dead." "No." Jack shook his head slowly. "Nathan is not dead. He is in hiding. Has been for 15 years. He paused, his sharp eyes studying her face. "And the reason you were brought to this forest, the reason they left you here to today, has everything to do with him." Riley kept the knife pointed at Jack Thornton, even as her mind reeled from his words. Her father, alive, hiding, for 15 years. It could not be true. She had mourned him, had spent a decade believing he abandoned her, left her behind because she was not good enough, not worth staying for. The pain of that abandonment had shaped her entire life, had convinced her that love was a lie and family was just another word for people who would eventually leave. And now this stranger was telling her it was all wrong. "You are lying," she heard herself say. "My father disappeared when I was 5. No one has heard from him since, because no one was supposed to hear from him." Jack moved slowly into the cabin, keeping his hands visible, giving her space. He lowered himself onto a dusty wooden chair, his joints creaking almost as loudly as the furniture. "Nathan did not abandon you, Riley. He left to protect you, from men who would have used you to get to him, or killed you just to make him suffer." "What men? What are you talking about?" Jack was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades. 35 years ago, your father and I were soldiers, special forces. We served under a man named Captain Marcus Crane, and we did things for him that still keep me awake at night. Bad things, things that would put us in prison if the truth ever came out." He paused, his scarred face heavy with old guilt. "Marcus Crane was not just our commanding officer. He was the patriarch of one of the most powerful families in the South. Old money, old blood, old secrets. And he used our unit to protect those secrets, to eliminate threats, to do the dirty work his family could not afford to be connected to." Riley listened, the knife slowly lowering as the story pulled her in despite her fear. "One day Nathan found something, a cave hidden in these mountains, filled with gold coins and old documents. Evidence of everything the Crane family had done for over 100 years. Slavery even after it was outlawed. Murder, political corruption, enough to bring down their entire empire. And my father took it? We both did." Jack's voice cracked slightly. "We thought we were doing the right thing. Thought we would hand the evidence over to the FBI, expose the Cranes, bring them to justice. But we were young and stupid. We did not understand that the Cranes had people everywhere. Police, judges, even agents in the FBI itself. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Instead of being protected, we became targets. The cranes put a price on our heads. Nathan and I had to disappear, split up, run in opposite directions so they could not catch us both. He met your mother during that time. They fell in love. Had you. Jack's voice softened. And then the cranes found out Nathan had a daughter. Riley felt cold spread through her chest. They threatened me? They would have done worse than threaten. They would have used you as bait to draw Nathan out or killed you to punish him for what he took. Jack shook his head slowly. So Nathan made the hardest decision of his life. He disappeared again, made it look like he was dead, led the cranes on a chase that has lasted 15 years, all to keep them looking at him instead of you. The knife clattered from Riley's fingers and hit the floor. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the edge of the dusty cot, her whole body trembling. All those years, all of that pain, all those nights she cried herself to sleep, believing her father did not love her. And he had been out there the whole time, watching her from a distance, keeping her safe by staying away. He saw you grow up, Jack said quietly. Every birthday, every first day of school, every soccer game, every school play, every moment he could manage without being spotted. He has photographs, hundreds of them. He knows you like the color blue, that you love to read, that you had a dog named Ranger. Tears spilled down Riley's cheeks. She did not try to stop them. Why now? Her voice came out as a whisper. Why is this happening now? Because someone betrayed Nathan. Someone in your family sold information to the cranes. They know you exist. They know where Nathan has been operating, and they used you as bait to draw him out. Aunt Martha. Riley felt sick. She was on the phone last night, talking about bringing me somewhere. The cranes paid her, paid your whole family to deliver you to this forest, near this cabin, where Nathan hid part of the treasure 30 years ago. They knew you would find it eventually, and they knew Nathan would come for you when he realized what happened. A sound outside the cabin, distant but unmistakable. Dogs barking, not random strays. The purposeful baying of hunting hounds following a scent. Jack was on his feet instantly, moving with a speed that belied his age. They are here. We have to go. Now. Bye-bye. 5 miles away, Senator William Crane stood before a topographic map spread across a table in a luxury cabin that looked nothing like the weathered treehouse Riley had found. This cabin had electricity, running water, a full security team in black tactical gear. It was a command center disguised as a hunting lodge, and William Crane had used it for years to coordinate operations that never appeared on any official record. He was 62 years old, silver hair swept back from a high forehead, the kind of distinguished appearance that won elections in commanded boardrooms. His suit was custom-made, his watch worth more than most people earned in a year. He looked like exactly what he was, a powerful man accustomed to getting whatever he wanted. The girl found the cabin, one of his security team reported. Thornton is with her now. Crane nodded slowly, unsurprised. Just as I predicted. He traced a finger across the map, following the terrain. Let them run, track them from a distance. I want to know where they go. And if they find the main cache, then we will be there waiting. Crane turned from the map, his eyes cold and hard. 35 years, Peterson. 35 years I've been chasing Nathan Dawson. My father died without recovering what was stolen from us. I will not make the same mistake. Peterson shifted uncomfortably. What about the girl? She is just a child. She is Nathan Dawson's blood. Crane's voice carried no emotion. That makes her leverage, or an example, depending on how cooperative her father chooses to be. He walked to the window, gazing out at the forest that stretched endlessly in every direction. Somewhere out there, the man who had destroyed his family's honor was finally within reach. My father built an empire, Crane said quietly, almost to himself. He did what was necessary to protect our name, our legacy. Nathan Dawson and Jack Thornton took all of that away when they stole those documents. They made us vulnerable, made us afraid. He turned back to Peterson. I'm going to end that fear tonight, one way or another. In a different part of the forest, Riley and Jack ran. They moved through the trees as fast as the terrain would allow, Jack leading with the confidence of someone who knew every rock and root and hidden path in these mountains. Riley followed close behind, ignoring the pain in her feet, the burning in her lungs, the terror clawing at her chest. Behind them, the dogs were getting closer. The main trail's compromised, Jack said without slowing. We go through the ravine. There is a cable crossing the old logging company set up decades ago. If we can get across, they will not be able to follow. A cable crossing, Riley gasped. You mean like a rope bridge? More like a wire. You hang from it and pull yourself across hand over hand. Jack glanced back at her, his expression grim. It is not easy, but it is our only option. The forest floor began to slope downward, the trees thinning as they approached the edge of a gorge that cut through the mountain like a wound. Riley could hear water roaring somewhere below, swollen from recent rains into something angry and dangerous. They broke through the tree line and stopped. The ravine was perhaps 60 feet across, sheer rock walls dropping 30 feet to where a river churned white over boulders and fallen logs. And stretching across the gap, glinting dully in the fading afternoon light, was a steel cable no thicker than Riley's wrist. Oh no. She stared at the cable, then at the deadly water below. I cannot do that. You can. Jack was already pulling rope from his pack, knotting it around his waist. You can because you have to. Those men behind us will not ask questions. They will not listen to explanations. They will put a bullet in your head and dump your body in the river, and nobody will ever know what happened to you. The dogs were louder now. Voices too. Men shouting to each other through the trees. Jack grabbed the cable, tested his weight. I go first. Make sure it holds. Then you follow. Use the rope as a guideline, hook your legs over the cable, and do not look down. Do not think. Just move. He did not wait for her response. He swung out over the gorge, his legs hooked over the cable, his arms pulling him forward inch by agonizing inch. The cable sagged under his weight, bouncing slightly, and Riley's stomach dropped just watching him. But Jack did not fall. He moved with grim determination, muscles straining until he reached the far side and hauled himself onto solid ground. Your turn, his voice carried across the gap. Use the rope I left. Riley looked at the rope tied to the tree beside her, looked at the cable stretching across empty space, looked at the churning white water 30 feet below. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to find another way, anything other than this insane crossing. Then a gunshot cracked through the forest behind her, and the decision was made. What? Riley grabbed the cable. The steel was cold and rough with rust, biting into her palms as she gripped it. She took one breath, then another. Then she kicked her legs up and hooked them over. The world inverted, sky below, water where sky should be, and she was hanging in between, suspended by nothing but her own strength and the reliability of a cable that had been rusting here for who knew how many decades. Keep moving, Jack's voice echoed across the water's roar. Do not stop. She pulled herself forward, hand over hand, the way her father had taught her to climb ropes in their backyard a lifetime ago. Except this rope was horizontal and slick, and there was no safety mat below, just rocks and white water and the very real possibility of death. Her shoulders burned. The blisters on her hands from the day's hike screamed in protest. The cable bounced and swayed with every movement, making her stomach lurch. She was halfway across when she heard the shout behind her. There, on the cable. She looked back without thinking. The cardinal sin of any crossing like this. She saw them at the ravine's edge. 3 men with rifles, one already raising his weapon. The crack of the gunshot split the air. Riley did not know if he was shooting at her or just trying to scare her, but the sound made her flinch, made her grip slip for a fraction of a second. That was enough. Her right hand lost its hold. Her body swung violently sideways, suspended only by her left hand, and her legs still hooked over the cable. Pain exploded through her shoulder as her full weight suddenly hung from joints and muscles never designed for this. She scrambled for the cable with her free hand, fingers clawing at rusted steel, and for one terrible heartbeat, she thought she would fall, thought this was how it ended, dropping into white water and stone. But her hand found purchase, locked on, held. Riley! Jack's voice cut through her panic. You are almost there. Do not let go. Her arms trembled with strain. Every muscle felt like it was tearing, but Riley pulled herself forward one agonizing inch at a time until her hand touched dirt and rock on the far side. Jack grabbed her wrist and hauled her up and over the edge. They collapsed together behind a boulder as another gunshot rang out, the bullet ricocheting off stone somewhere too close. Riley's shoulder felt like someone had driven a spike through it. Her hands were raw and bleeding, but she was alive. Alive. On the other side of the ravine, The men were arguing, gesturing downstream where the gorge might narrow enough to cross. They would find a way eventually. But not yet. Not now. Jack was already checking her shoulder with quick practice touches. Strained, maybe a partial tear. You need to favor it. He pulled a triangle bandage from his pack and fashioned a rough sling. Can you keep moving? Riley nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. Jack helped her to her feet, because we have a long way to go. As they disappeared into the forest on the far side of the ravine, Riley allowed herself one moment to look back at the cable still swaying gently over the abyss. She had done that. 15 years old, injured and terrified, and alone. And she had crossed a 30-foot chasm on a rusted wire with men shooting at her. Her father had taught her to survive. And survive she would, no matter what came next. Abarim. They walked for 2 more hours before Jack called a halt. The forest here was older, the trees so massive their canopy blocked out most of the fading daylight. Jack found a hollow beneath an uprooted hemlock, its root system creating a natural shelter. He pushed Riley inside, then followed, pulling branches across the entrance to hide them from view. We rest here, he whispered. 5 minutes. Let them lose the trail. Riley's entire body shook with exhaustion and adrenaline. Her breath came in ragged gasps she tried to muffle against her sleeve. But her mind would not quiet. Her father was alive. Her father had been watching her. Her father had given up everything to keep her safe. Jack, her voice cracked. Tell me about him. Tell me about my dad. Jack was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of years. Nathan Dawson is the best man I have ever known, he said simply, and the most haunted. He shifted in the darkness, finding a more comfortable position against the dirt wall. After he left, after he made everyone believe he was dead, he could not stay away from you. Every few weeks he would find a way to get close, watch you from a distance, make sure you were safe. Jack paused. When you were 7 at your mother's funeral, he was there, standing behind a tree at the back of the cemetery. He wanted so badly to come to you, to hold you, to tell you that you were not alone. But there were men watching, Crane's men. They were hoping Nathan would show himself. If he had taken even one step towards you, they would have had him. And then they would have had you. Riley felt tears sliding down her cheeks again. He was there? He was always there. Your first day of middle school, your soccer championship when you were 10. He watched you score your first goal and cried like a baby. Jack's voice softened. The day you found Ranger, he saw that too. Saw you pick up that puppy and carry him home. He knew then that you had his heart, the same instinct to protect the helpless, the same refusal to walk away from someone who needed you. Ranger. Riley's throat tightened. Someone took Ranger 3 days ago. That was Nathan. Jack's voice was gentle. He knew what your aunt was planning, knew they would bring you into the forest. He could not stop them without revealing himself, but he could make sure Ranger did not suffer for their cruelty. He took the dog somewhere safe. Riley's chest heaved with a she could not contain. Her father had saved Ranger, had been watching over her even now, even after 15 years, still protecting her in whatever way he could. Why did he never contact me? A letter, a message, anything? Because any contact could be traced. The Cranes have resources you cannot imagine. Money, technology, people in every agency and institution. If Nathan had sent so much as a postcard, they would have found him. Found you. Jack reached out and placed a weathered hand on her arm. Everything he did, every sacrifice he made, was to keep you alive. That is not abandonment, Riley, that is love. They moved again before full darkness fell. Jack led her through terrain that would have been impassable to anyone who did not know exactly where they were going. Hidden trails, game paths, shortcuts through rock formations that looked solid but contained narrow passages just wide enough for a human body. As they walked, Riley felt something shifting inside her. The anger and hurt she had carried for 10 years, the belief that she was unworthy of love, all of it beginning to crack and crumble like old mortar. Her father loved her, had always loved her, had sacrificed his own happiness, his own life, to keep her safe. That knowledge did not erase the pain of growing up alone, but it transformed it, gave it meaning, made all those years of loneliness feel like something other than abandonment, like a gift, like a shield she never knew she had. Jack, she spoke into the darkness as they climbed. What happens now? Now we get you to safety. Jack's voice was steady despite the exertion of the climb. "There is a ranger station at North Ridge, abandoned for years, but Nathan has been using it as a base. If he knows what happened to you, and he probably does, he will meet us there." And then, Jack did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice carried a weight of finality. "Then we end this, one way or another." Never. They reached the outskirts of the ranger station as the last light faded from the sky. It was a single-story building with a peaked roof and a porch that sagged in the middle. The windows were boarded over, the wood gray and rotting. It looked like exactly what it was, a structure left to decay into the forest floor. But there were signs someone had been here recently. Fresh boot prints on the dusty steps. A sleeping bag rolled neatly in one corner when they peered through a gap in the boards. Canned food stacked on what had once been a reception desk. Jack signaled for Riley to wait while he circled the building checking for threats. He returned after a few minutes, his expression thoughtful. "Clear, but someone has definitely been staying here." He led her up the porch steps, the old wood groaning under their weight. "Nathan has to be." Inside, the station smelled of dust and mouse droppings and old wood. Riley's eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness, picking out shapes, the desk, file cabinets, a wood stove in one corner, long cold. And on the wall above the desk, partially hidden by a water-stained map of the park, a photograph. Riley crossed to it, her heart pounding. She lifted the frame down carefully, brushing dust from the cracked glass. Two men in the photograph. Young, maybe 30, standing in front of this very station when it was still maintained. Both smiling, arms around each other's shoulders with the easy affection of close friends. One was clearly Jack, younger, the scar on his cheek fresh and red, but unmistakably him. The other, Riley felt her breath catch. The other man had her eyes, her nose. The same stubborn set to his jaw that she saw every morning in the mirror. Nathan Dawson, her father, before everything went wrong. He was happy. Then, Jack said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "We both were, before we learned what we were really fighting for. Before we had to choose between loyalty and conscience." Riley traced her father's face through the cracked glass. 30 years ago, he had stood in this very building, laughing with his best friend, unaware of everything that would come. Then she noticed something else, a piece of paper tucked into the frame's edge, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. She pulled it out with trembling fingers and unfolded it, handwritten. The same flowing script she remembered from birthday cards when she was very young, before her father disappeared. "If you find this, come to the cave. I am waiting." And Riley looked at Jack, her heart hammering. "He knew I would come here. He knew I would find this." Jack nodded slowly. "Nathan always has a plan. Even when it looks like chaos, there is always a plan." Before Riley could respond, the front door of the station crashed open. Three men with guns surged through, and behind them, stepping into the dim light with the casual confidence of a man who owned the world, came Senator William Crane. "Well," he said, his cultured voice carrying clearly in the dusty silence, "it seems I arrived just in time." And the screen faded to black. Text appeared. Part 2. Through Hell. Riley Dawson had spent 15 years believing she was abandoned. Now she knew the truth. Her father had sacrificed everything to protect her, and the men who wanted him dead had finally found their way to her. What happened next would determine not just her survival, but the fate of everyone she loved, including a father she had only just begun to understand. Senator William Crane filled the doorway like a shadow given human form. He was everything Riley had imagined, and nothing like she expected. Tall, distinguished, silver hair swept back from a face that belonged on campaign posters and magazine covers. His suit was wrinkled and torn in places, evidence of his trek through the wilderness, but he wore the damage like a badge of honor, a man willing to get his hands dirty when necessary. His eyes were what terrified her, cold, calculating, the eyes of someone who had ordered deaths and slept soundly afterward. "Jack Thornton," Crane said, stepping into the ranger station with the casual confidence of a man entering his own home. "I heard you were still haunting these mountains, clinging to the past like a ghost who forgot how to move on." Jack had positioned himself between Riley and the door the moment Crane appeared. His hand rested near the knife at his belt, but they both knew it was useless. Three men with rifles stood behind Crane, their weapons trained and ready. "William." Jack's voice was steady, betraying none of the tension Riley could see in his shoulders. "I should have known you would crawl out eventually. Your father failed for 30 years. I assumed the apple fell close to the tree." Something flickered in Crane's eyes. Anger, tightly controlled but present. My father was a great man. He built an empire, protected our family's legacy for generations. And you and Nathan Dawson destroyed it all with your theft and your self-righteous crusade. Your father was a murderer, William, a slaver. Careful. Crane's voice dropped to something dangerous. Very careful what you say next, Thornton. The senator's gaze shifted past Jack, landing on Riley. She forced herself not to shrink back, though every instinct screamed at her to run. And this must be the girl. Crane studied her the way a collector might study a rare specimen. Nathan Dawson's daughter, I have to say you look like your mother, but those eyes… He smiled without warmth. Those are Nathan's eyes. I would recognize them anywhere. You do not know anything about my father. Riley was surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Oh, but I do. Crane stepped closer, and the men behind him adjusted their positions to maintain clear firing lines. I knew Nathan Dawson when he was a 20-year-old soldier in my father's unit. I watched him follow orders without question. I saw what he was capable of when properly motivated. He stopped a few feet from Jack, his attention still fixed on Riley. Your father was a killer, child. A very efficient one. My father's favorite, in fact, until he decided to grow a conscience and betray everything we built. Riley felt the words land like physical blows. Killer, efficient, favorite. She thought of the man in the photograph, smiling with Jack, thought of the father who had watched her soccer games from a distance and cried when she found Ranger. Could that man really have been what Crane described? Whatever he was, she said, he is not that anymore. People do not change. Crane's voice carried the absolute certainty of religious conviction. They simply hide what they are. Your father is hiding right now, somewhere in these mountains, waiting for a chance to strike. That is why you are here. That is why I let you and Jack run through the forest like frightened rabbits. Let them run. The words registered with cold clarity. You were tracking us, Riley said, the whole time. Of course. You think those men at the ravine were actually trying to stop you? They were hurting you, driving you toward this station where I knew Nathan would be waiting. Crane glanced around the dusty interior. Though it seems he is running a bit late. Jack had not moved, but Riley could sense him calculating, looking for an angle, an opportunity. What do you want, William? The gold, the documents? I will tell you where they are. Just let the girl go. Crane laughed, a genuine laugh, as if Jack had said something truly amusing. The gold? The documents? He shook his head. Jack, I am worth more than that treasure ever was. I have been a senator for 12 years. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Do you really think this is about wealth? He turned away, walking to the window where the old map hung faded and water-stained. This is about legacy, about finishing what my father started, about looking Nathan Dawson in the eyes when I take from him everything he loves, the way he took from me. Crane touched the map with one finger, tracing the contours of the mountains. My father died because of what Nathan did. Not from a bullet or a blade, but from the stress of 30 years spent hunting a ghost. His heart gave out, and in his final moments, he made me promise I would find Nathan Dawson and make him pay. He turned back to face them, and Riley saw something in his eyes that was worse than the cold calculation from before. She saw obsession. I intend to keep that promise.
Yes, I'm…
Riley's mind raced as Crane stood before them, his men blocking every exit. They were trapped, outnumbered, outgunned. Jack was a 60-year-old man with a knife, and she was a 15-year-old girl with a bum shoulder and no weapons at all. But she had something else, something Crane did not know about. The map. Back in the tunnel, during their escape from the first cabin, Jack had shown her a copy of her father's map. The one covered in strange symbols that seemed random, but were actually a complex code. Circles, triangles, squares. Some filled in, some hollow. And Riley had seen the pattern. Her mind worked differently than most people's. It always had. Where others saw chaos, she saw structure. Where others saw random symbols, she saw geometric relationships waiting to be uncovered. She had solved her father's code in minutes, had identified the star pattern formed by overlapping shapes, had found the center point where the main cache would be hidden. Crane did not know any of this. You want to find my father? Riley said suddenly, drawing the senator's attention. But you cannot. You have been looking for 35 years, and you have never come close. Crane's eyes narrowed. I came close enough to find you, because someone sold me out. Aunt Martha or whoever else in my family you paid. Riley took a step forward, ignoring the way the rifleman tensed. But you do not actually know where my father is. You do not know where the real treasure is hidden. All you have is a girl and an old man and a desperate hope that Nathan will come to rescue us. Riley, Jack's voice carried a warning she chose to ignore. What if he does not come, she continued. What if he decides I am not worth the risk? What if he disappears again and you spend another 35 years chasing shadows? Crane studied her with new interest. You have a point you are trying to make, child. Make it. Riley felt her heart hammering against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. I know how to find him. I can read the map. Silence fell over the station. Even the men with rifles seemed to hold their breath. The map. Crane's voice was carefully neutral. What map? My father's map, the one he used to hide the treasure across these mountains. It is coded, encrypted in a way that no one has been able to solve for 35 years. Riley lifted her chin, meeting Crane's cold eyes. I solved it in 10 minutes. Jack made a sound behind her, something between a groan and a curse. But Riley did not look back. She kept her focus on Crane, watching his face for any sign of what he was thinking. You are lying, the senator said finally. No one can read that map. My father's best cryptographers spent years trying to crack it, because they were looking for a code. Letters substituted for numbers, words hidden in the symbols. Riley shook her head. It is not a code, it is geometry. The symbols form shapes when you connect them properly. Two shapes that overlap to create a star, and the center of that star is where the main cache is hidden. Crane was very still. His eyes searched her face, looking for deception. Prove it, he said. Riley hesitated. If she revealed everything she knew, she would lose her only leverage. But if she revealed nothing, Crane had no reason to keep her alive. Let Jack go, she said. He walks out to here, into the forest, unharmed. Once I know he is safe, I will take you to the center point. I will show you where my father hid everything. Riley, no! Jack grabbed her arm. You cannot trust him. The moment you show him what he wants, he will kill you. Probably. Riley did not look away from Crane. But right now, I am the only person alive who can read that map. That makes me valuable, and I am betting the senator is smart enough to know that. Crane stood motionless for a long moment. The tension in the room was thick enough to taste. Then he smiled, a thin, cold smile that did not reach his eyes. You have your father's courage, he said, or his foolishness. I have never been entirely sure which was which. He nodded to one of his men. Let Thornton go. William? One of the men started. Do it. Crane's voice brooked no argument. The girl is right. She is valuable. Thornton is not. Yeah. They escorted Jack to the door of the ranger station at gunpoint. Riley watched him go, her chest tight with emotions she could not afford to show. Jack Thornton, the man who had saved her life, who had told her the truth about her father, who had carried her halfway across these mountains. She was sending him away to save her own skin. Or so Crane believed. At the door, Jack turned back to look at her. His scarred face was unreadable, but his eyes said everything. Be smart, be strong, survive. Find your father, he said quietly. He is closer than you think. And remember what I taught you. In the forest, the one who knows the terrain always has the advantage. Riley nodded, not trusting her voice. Then Jack was gone, disappearing into the darkness outside the station, and Riley was alone with the most dangerous man she had ever met. Crane waved his men back, giving Riley space. He produced a flashlight and clicked it on, illuminating the dusty interior of the station with harsh white light. Now then, he said, you mentioned a map. I assume you have it? Jack has a copy. The original is in the tree cabin where you first sent your men. Yes, the cabin. Crane's lips thinned, which my people are currently searching. But you claimed to have already solved the code. Surely you remember the location? Riley did remember, every detail. Her mind had photographed the map the moment she understood its structure, burned it into her memory with perfect clarity. But she was not going to give Crane everything at once. I need to see the map again to be sure, she lied. The geometry is complex. I can point you in the right direction, but if you want the exact location, I need the physical document. Crane studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled a radio from his belt and spoke into it. Peterson, bring whatever documents you found in the cabin to the station, all of them. A crackle of static, then a voice responded. Copy that. We will be there in 30 minutes. Crane tucked the radio away and turned back to Riley. Half an hour then. We have time. He gestured to a chair. Sit, rest. You look like you have had a difficult day. The casual courtesy was somehow more terrifying than threats would have been. This was a man so confident in his control that he could afford to be polite to his captives. Riley sat and waited. And the wait stretched like hours, though it was probably closer to 20 minutes. Crane spent most of it by the window, staring out into the darkness as if he could see something there that Riley could not. His men remained at their posts, rifles ready, but the tension had eased slightly. They thought they had won, thought the girl was cooperating and the treasure was within reach. Riley used the time to study her captor. William Crane was not simply evil. She could see that now. He was a man consumed by something that had eaten away at his humanity for decades. Obsession, grief, the weight of a promise made to a dying father. In another life, under different circumstances, he might have been something else. A teacher, a businessman, a father himself. But the path he had chosen, or the path that had been chosen for him and had led him here, to this abandoned station, to this hunt for a man he blamed for destroying his family. Riley understood something about that kind of pain. She had carried her own version of it for 10 years, believing her father had abandoned her. The difference was that her pain had turned inward, becoming self-doubt and loneliness. Crane's pain had turned outward, becoming a weapon aimed at everyone who stood between him and his revenge. "You are very quiet," Crane said without turning from the window. "Most children in your situation would be crying, begging, trying to negotiate. Would it help if I did?" A soft laugh. "No, but it would be more expected." He turned to face her. "You are remarkably composed for a 15-year-old girl whose life hangs by a thread." "I have had a lot of practice being afraid," Riley said. "It does not help anything to let it control you." Crane considered this. "Your father said something similar once, years ago, when we were both much younger. He said fear was just information, data to be processed and used, not a force to be obeyed." "You knew him well." "I knew him as well as anyone could, which was not very well at all, as it turned out." Crane walked to the desk, brushing dust from its surface. "Nathan Dawson was my father's most trusted operative. He did things that would make your stomach turn, child. Interrogations, eliminations, the dirty work that keeps empires running." Riley said nothing, but something must have shown in her face. "You do not believe me." Crane sounded almost amused. "You think your father is some kind of hero, a noble rebel fighting against corrupt power. That is the story he would want you to believe, is it not? I think people can change." "No." Crane shook his head firmly. "People do not change. They simply reveal more of what they always were. Your father was a killer. He used those skills for my family. Then he turned them against us. The only thing that changed was his target." He leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. "Do you know what the documents in that cave actually contain? Not just evidence of my family's sins, also records of every operation your father participated in, names of people he killed, photographs of what he did to prisoners during interrogations. If those documents ever came to light, Nathan Dawson would spend the rest of his life in prison, assuming he survived long enough to stand trial." Riley felt the words land, each one a small wound. She thought of the letter she had found in the frame, of the father who had watched her from a distance all those years. Had that same man really done the things Crane described? "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know the truth before you decide whether your father is worth dying for." Crane's voice softened, almost becoming gentle. "You are a child, Riley, an innocent. You did not choose to be born into this conflict. If you cooperate fully, if you help me find Nathan and recover what he stole, I might be persuaded to let you walk away. Start a new life somewhere far from here. Forget all of this ever happened." It was a lie. Riley knew it was a lie the moment the words left his mouth. William Crane was not going to let her walk away, no matter how cooperative she was. She knew too much. She had seen too much. But she pretended to consider his offer, pretended to wrestle with the temptation. "And if I refuse, then you die with your father when I find him." Crane shrugged as if discussing the weather. "Either way, this ends tonight. I have waited 35 years, Riley. I am not waiting any longer." "Pato." A knock at the door announced the arrival of Crane's man with the documents. Peterson entered carrying a weathered canvas bag, the kind soldiers used in old wars. He set it on the desk, then stepped back to join the other guards. Crane opened the bag and began extracting its contents. Papers, photographs, a leather journal, and finally, carefully rolled, the map. Riley felt her pulse quicken as he spread it across the desk. Even from several feet away, she could see the symbols scattered across the topographical lines, circles and triangles and squares. The code that had protected her father's secrets for 3 decades. There, Crane gestured her forward. Show me. Riley rose from her chair and approached the desk slowly. Her shoulder throbbed with every movement, but she ignored it. Pain was just information, data to be processed and used. She looked down at the map. The symbols jumped out at her immediately, forming patterns that seemed obvious now that she understood the system. The filled circles, the hollow circles, the triangles pointing up and the triangles pointing down. All of them connected by invisible lines that created shapes within shapes. Here, she traced her finger across the map without touching it. If you connect these filled circles, they form a pentagon, and these hollow ones form an inverted pentagon. The two shapes overlap to create a 10-pointed star. Crane leaned in, following her invisible lines. I see it, he breathed. 35 years and I never... The center point is here. Riley pointed to a spot in the mountains where no symbol existed, just blank space. That is where the main cache is hidden. Everything else is just decoys and smaller deposits designed to throw off anyone who got close. Crane stared at the spot for a long moment. Then he looked at Riley with something that might have been respect. You really did solve it. I told you I could. Yes, you did. Crane straightened up, pulling the map toward him. Peterson, mark this location on our GPS. We move as soon as everyone is assembled. What about the girl? Crane glanced at Riley. For a moment, she saw him weighing her value against the inconvenience of keeping her alive. She comes with us, he decided, in case there are other puzzles to solve, and as insurance in case her father is watching. Etchman. They moved through the forest like ghosts. Crane led the way with a handheld GPS unit, its screen glowing faintly in the darkness. Riley walked behind him, flanked by 2 of his men. 2 more brought up the rear, rifles ready. The terrain was brutal, steep slopes covered in loose rock, streams swollen from recent rain, thickets of mountain laurel so dense they had to hack through with machetes. Riley's shoulder screamed with every jarring step, but she forced herself to keep pace. Falling behind would make her a liability. And liabilities, she understood now, did not survive long in Crane's world. As they walked, she thought about her father. Was Crane right? Had Nathan Dawson really been a killer? Had he done terrible things in service of the Crane family before his conscience finally woke up? The answer, she realized, did not matter. Not really. People were complicated. They contained multitudes. The same man could be a monster in one chapter of his life and a hero in another. What mattered was not what her father had been, but what he was now, what he had sacrificed, what he was still trying to protect. He had watched her grow up from a distance, had given up any chance at a normal life to keep her safe, had stayed away for 15 years, enduring isolation and loneliness, because his presence would have put her in danger. That was not the behavior of a monster. That was the behavior of a man trying desperately to atone for his sins. Whatever he had done in the past, he had spent 15 years trying to make it right. And Riley was not going to let William Crane take that away from him. They stopped to rest near a small waterfall, the sound of the rushing water covering their whispered conversations. Riley sat on a flat rock, her arms wrapped around her knees, watching the water cascade over the rocky ledge. The moon had risen, casting silver light through the gaps in the canopy. Under different circumstances, this would have been beautiful. Her mind drifted to Jack's words at the ranger station. Your father watched you grow up. Every birthday, every first day of school, she thought about all those moments. All those times she had felt alone, abandoned, unwanted. And now she knew that somewhere nearby, hidden in the shadows, her father had been watching, loving her from a distance because getting close would have meant her death. She thought about her 5th birthday, the party at the park with the cheap decorations and the store-bought cake. She remembered looking around at the other kids' parents and wondering why hers was not there, why he had left, why she was not enough to make him stay. He had been there, at the edge of the park, watching. She thought about the funeral, her mother's casket being lowered into the ground. Standing there in her black dress, 7 years old, feeling more alone than any child should ever have to feel. He had been there too, behind a tree at the back of the cemetery, wanting to hold her, unable to risk it. She thought about this day she found Ranger. The joy of that moment, the first real happiness she had felt since her mother died. Picking up that trembling puppy and knowing somehow that they belonged together. Her father had seen that, had watched his daughter save a helpless creature, and had recognized himself in her actions. Tears streamed down Riley's face, but she made no sound. She could not afford to show weakness in front of Crane and his men. But inside something was shifting. The anger and hurt she had carried for so long was transforming into something else. Determination. She was going to survive this. She was going to find her father. And she was going to make sure William Crane paid for every moment of suffering he had caused. As if sensing her thoughts, Crane approached and sat down on a rock nearby. "Tell me," he said conversationally, "what do you remember of your father? Before he disappeared, I mean." Riley wiped her face with the back of her hand, hoping the darkness hid the evidence of her tears. "Not much. I was 5 when he left. Just impressions. The sound of his laugh, the way he used to carry me on his shoulders. He was good with children." Crane's voice was distant, almost wistful. "I remember that. There was a Christmas party once at my father's estate. Nathan spent the whole evening entertaining the younger guests. Magic tricks, stories. The children adored him." Riley said nothing, unsure where this was going. "My father noticed. He said Nathan would make an excellent father someday." Crane laughed bitterly. "He was right in a way. Nathan just chose to father someone else's legacy instead of serving ours." "Is that what this is really about?" Riley asked. "You are angry that my father chose something else over your family?" "I am angry that he destroyed us." Crane's voice hardened. "Do you have any idea what the last 35 years have been like? Living in constant fear that those documents would surface? Spending millions on security, on searching, on trying to find one man in a country of 300 million people?" He turned to face her, and in the moonlight his eyes looked almost mad. "My father died because of that stress. My mother drank herself to death trying to cope. My brother overdosed when he was 23. Crane's voice cracked slightly. "I am the last one left, the only Crane who still remembers what we were before Nathan Dawson tore it all apart." Riley felt an unexpected pang of something that was almost sympathy. "Almost. Your family hurt people," she said quietly. "The documents prove crimes going back 150 years. Slavery, murder, corruption. My father did not create those sins. He just tried to expose them." "He had no right." Crane was on his feet suddenly, looming over her. "Who made him judge and jury? Who gave him permission to decide that our legacy should be destroyed? We built this country. Our family has been part of American history since before the Revolution. And one self-righteous soldier thought he could erase all of that because of choices made by men who died a century before he was born." Riley did not flinch, though her heart was racing. "The choices were still being made. Your father was still hurting people. That is why my father took those documents. Not to judge the past, but to stop the present." Crane stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he sat back down. "You really are his daughter," he said quietly. "The same damn certainty. The same inability to see shades of gray." He looked up at the sky, visible in patches through the trees. "We are almost there, another hour, maybe less. And then this ends, one way or another." He glanced at her. "For both of us." They reached the location just as the first gray light of dawn began to filter through the trees. A clearing in the forest, perhaps 50 feet across, ringed by ancient oaks that had to be centuries old. In the center rose an outcropping of granite, weathered and covered in lichen. And at the base of that outcropping, half hidden by ferns and moss, was a gap in the rock. Riley felt something shift inside her as she looked at it. This was the place, the center of the star, the location her father had protected for 35 years. Crane approached the gap carefully, shining his flashlight into the darkness. The beam revealed rough stone walls disappearing into black. "A cave," he breathed. "Natural formation expanded by hand, your father's main cache." He turned to his men. "Peterson, Williams, you are with me. The rest of you stay here with the girl. If anyone approaches, you shoot first and ask questions never." Then he disappeared into the cave, his flashlight bobbing in the darkness until it was swallowed entirely. Riley stood in the clearing, surrounded by armed men, watching the entrance to the cave where her father's greatest secret was about to be uncovered. And she prayed that whatever happened next, she would be strong enough to face it. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Riley's guards grew restless, shifting their weight, exchanging glances. Something was wrong. Crane should have emerged by now, triumphant, carrying whatever he had found. Finally, a figure appeared at the cave entrance. Crane, but changed somehow. His face was pale, his movements jerky. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. "Sir?" Peterson's voice echoed from inside the cave. "Sir, what should we—" "Shut up!" Crane's voice was barely above a whisper. He walked toward Riley, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her blood run cold. You knew what was in there." Riley shook her head, genuine confusion mixing with fear. "I have never been in that cave. I only knew where it was, not what—" "It is empty!" Crane screamed, all composure finally shattering. "Empty! Decades of searching, and it is empty!" He grabbed Riley by the shoulders, shaking her hard enough to make her teeth rattle. "Where is it? Where did he move it? Tell me!" "I do not know," Riley gasped. "I swear I do not know." One of the guards stepped forward. "Sir, maybe the location was wrong. Maybe we should—" Crane spun on him with a murder in his eyes. The location was perfect. The cache was there. You can see where the crates used to be, the outlines in the dust. But they are gone. Someone moved everything. He turned back to Riley, and now there was something calculating in his gaze. Something dangerous. "Nathan knew, sir," he said slowly. "He knew we were coming. He moved the treasure and left the cave empty as a message." His grip tightened on her shoulders, which means he is close, watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. Crane released her and stepped back, visibly forcing himself to calm down. "New plan," he said. "Amazing. His voice controlled but trembling with suppressed rage. "The girl is bait now. We take her somewhere visible, somewhere Nathan can see, and we make it clear that she dies if he does not surrender." "Sir, that could take—" "As long as it takes," Crane shouted, then more quietly. "As long as it takes. I have waited 35 years. I can wait a little longer." "Me too, bub." But Riley had seen something Crane missed. When he grabbed her, she had looked past him into the cave entrance, had seen Peterson emerging with something in his hand, a piece of paper, folded with writing on it. A note, left where the treasure used to be. Peterson handed it to Crane without comment. The senator unfolded it, read it once, twice, 3 times. His face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, recognition, fury. "What does it say?" Riley asked, unable to stop herself. Crane looked at her, then surprisingly he read the note aloud. "William, if you are reading this, you found the cave but not what you were looking for. I moved everything years ago when I realized you were getting close. The treasure exists, but you will never find it without me. And I will only negotiate for one thing, my daughter's life. Release her unharmed, and I will meet you. Hurt her, and I disappear forever. You know I can do it. You know you will never find me. The choice is yours, Nathan." Riley's heart soared. Her father knew. He had anticipated this, planned for it, left instructions. He was going to save her. But Crane's reaction was not what she expected. Instead of rage, a slow smile spread across his face. "Finally," he whispered. "After all these years, he is ready to face me." He looked at Riley with something that was almost gratitude. "Your father loves you very much," he said. "Enough to trade his life for yours. That is useful information." He folded the note and tucked it into his pocket. "We are going to arrange a meeting, Riley. Your father will come to save you, and I will be waiting. And then finally this 35-year nightmare will be over." In Pfash. They made camp at this edge of the clearing as full daylight broke over the mountains. Crane sent 2 of his men to find a suitable location for the exchange, somewhere open where Nathan could not set up an ambush. The rest stayed to guard Riley and maintain radio contact. She sat against a tree, her wrist now bound with zip ties, watching Crane pace and plan. His earlier composure had returned, but there was an energy to him now, an anticipation that bordered on excitement. He had waited 35 years for this, and now it was finally happening. Riley's mind raced, searching for options. Her father was coming, but he would be walking into a trap. Crane had more men, more guns, and the element of surprise. Even if Nathan was the soldier Jack described, the odds were heavily against him, unless Riley could find a way to change those odds. She looked around the camp, cataloging assets. The guards were alert but not paranoid. Crane was distracted by his planning. Her bonds were tight but not unbearable. And somewhere in this forest, Jack Thornton was still free. Riley had told Crane to release Jack as a condition of her cooperation. Crane had complied, probably assuming one old man in the wilderness was not a threat. But Jack knew these mountains better than anyone. Jack had survived decades of hiding and fighting. Jack was not going to abandon her. He was out there right now, watching, waiting for his chance. All Riley had to do was survive long enough to give him one. The radio crackled with Peterson's voice. Found a spot, sir. Old logging clearing about a mile east. Good sight lines. No cover for an approach. Perfect. Crane keyed the radio. Set up there. We move in 1 hour. He turned to Riley with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Almost over now, one way or another, by sunset, this all ends. Riley said nothing, but her mind was working, turning over possibilities, looking for weaknesses. In the distance, a bird called, a mourning dove, its cry echoing through the trees. And somewhere, Riley knew her father was listening. They marched her to the logging clearing as the sun climbed toward noon. It was exactly as Peterson described. A wide open space, perhaps 200 feet across, where trees had been harvested decades ago. The stumps had rotted down to nothing, leaving only flat ground covered in wild grass and wildflowers. Beautiful in a desolate sort of way. Crane positioned Riley in the center of the clearing, visible from all directions. His men spread out along the tree line, finding cover behind stumps and fallen logs. They had clear firing lines to every approach. If Nathan came, he would be walking into a kill zone. Crane stood next to Riley, his pistol drawn, but held loosely at his side. He looked almost relaxed, a man finally at the end of a long journey. Your father will come, he said quietly. Men like him cannot help themselves. They have to be heroes, even when heroism means death. You do not know him. I know the type. Crane shrugged. I have been fighting men like Nathan Dawson my whole life. They think they are righteous, think they are on the side of angels. They never understand that the world does not work that way, that sometimes terrible things have to be done to maintain order. Riley looked at him. Is that what you tell yourself? That the murders and the corruption and the cover-ups were about maintaining order? They were about survival, family survival. Crane's voice hardened. You are too young to understand. But someday, if you live long enough, you will learn that the only thing that matters is protecting the people you love. Everything else is just details. My father understood that. That is why he left, to protect me. And look where it got you, standing in a field about to watch him die. Crane smiled coldly. Your father's love killed him, Riley. Remember that. Hours passed. The sun traced its arc across the sky, shadows lengthening as afternoon wore on toward evening. Riley stood in the center of the clearing, her legs aching, her shoulder throbbing, her wrists raw from the zip ties. Crane waited with inhuman patience. His men rotated positions, maintaining their vigilance. Occasionally, someone would sweep the tree line with binoculars, looking for any sign of approach. Nothing. Riley began to wonder if her father would come at all. Maybe he had weighed the odds and decided she was not worth the risk. Maybe he was already miles away, disappearing into the wilderness like the ghost he had been for 15 years. The thought hurt more than she expected. Then, as the sun touched the western ridgeline, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, a voice echoed across the clearing. William. Crane straightened, his whole body going tense. Nathan, his voice carried clearly in the still air. Show yourself. A figure emerged from the tree line on the far side of the clearing, tall, lean, moving with the careful grace of a man who knew exactly how dangerous his situation was. Nathan Dawson, Riley's father. He walked slowly toward the center of the clearing, his hands raised and empty. He was older than the photograph, his hair now more gray than black, his face weathered by years of hard living. But his eyes were the same, the eyes Riley saw in the mirror every morning. He was looking at her, only at her, as if Crane and the armed men did not exist. Riley, his voice cracked on her name. Baby girl. Shut! Her voice broke. She could not finish the word. Nathan stopped 20 feet away, his hand still raised. His gaze finally shifted to Crane. I am here, William. Let her go. Crane laughed. Just like that? After 35 years, you think you can just surrender and everything ends? I am not surrendering. I am offering a trade. Nathan's voice was steady, calm, the voice of a man who had accepted his fate. Me for her, my life for her freedom. That is what you wanted, is it not? To look me in the eyes when you kill me. Well, here I am, looking. Crane considered this. And the documents, the evidence, hidden, safe. If I die, they get released to every major news organization in the country. If Riley dies, the same thing happens. But if we both walk out of here alive, the documents stay buried forever. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to be smart enough to realize this is the best deal you are ever going to get. Nathan's voice hardened. You can kill us both and watch your family's empire collapse within a week. Or you can let my daughter go and spend the rest of your life free from the fear of exposure. Your choice, William. Just like I said in the note. Yes, Crane stood frozen, his mind clearly racing through calculations. Riley watched him, barely breathing. Her father was bluffing. He had to be. There was no way he had actually arranged for the documents to be released upon his death. That kind of dead man switch would require trust in someone, and Nathan Dawson had spent 15 years trusting no one. But Crane did not know that, and the doubt was eating at him. How do I know you are telling the truth, he asked finally. You do not. Nathan shrugged. But ask yourself this. In 35 years, have I ever lied to you? I said I would disappear, and I did. I said you would never find me, and you did not. I said I would protect my daughter, and here I am. Whatever else I am, William, I keep my word. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Crane raised his pistol and pointed it at Nathan's chest. I have waited too long, he said quietly. I have sacrificed too much. My father died waiting for this moment. I am not going to let it pass. Then you doom your family. Nathan did not flinch. Everything my files contain goes public. Murders, bribes, names, dates, photographs, everything. Maybe I do not care anymore. Maybe some things are more important than survival. Is revenge worth your family's complete destruction? Crane's finger tightened on the trigger. And then, from somewhere in the trees, a dog began to bark. Foreign. The screen faded to black. Text appeared. Part 3, Through Hell. Riley Dawson's father had come to save her. But William Crane had waited 35 years for his revenge. And somewhere in the forest, an unexpected ally was about to change everything. The final battle was just beginning. The sound cut through the tension like a blade. A dog barking. Not the random noise of a stray animal, but the purposeful, urgent bark of a dog that had found something. Or someone. Everyone in the clearing froze. Crane's finger hovered on the trigger. His attention suddenly split between Nathan and the tree line where the sound originated. His men shifted nervously, rifles swinging toward the new threat. Riley's heart slammed against her ribs. She knew that bark. She would know it anywhere, in any circumstance, even at the end of the world. Ranger, her dog, her best friend. The creature she had believed lost forever, taken by the storm 3 nights ago. But how? Jack had said her father rescued Ranger, kept him safe somewhere. Was this part of a plan, a distraction? The barking grew louder, closer, and then, bursting from the undergrowth at the edge of the clearing, came a blur of black and tan fur. Ranger sprinted across the open ground, ignoring the armed men, ignoring Crane, ignoring everything except the girl standing in the center of the field. He reached Riley and launched himself at her, nearly knocking her down despite her bound hands, his tongue lapping at her face, his whole body vibrating with joy. Ranger. Riley's voice broke. Oh God, Ranger. She dropped to her knees and the dog pressed against her, whimpering with happiness. 3 days of terror and loss and fear, and here he was, alive, safe, finding his way back to her, just like he always did. What the hell? Crane's voice cut through the moment. Where did that dog come from? His men were scanning the trees, looking for whoever had released the animal. But the forest remained still and silent. Nathan had not moved. He stood with his hands still raised, but there was something new in his eyes, something that looked almost like hope. Ranger was my insurance, he said quietly. I knew if anything happened to me, he would find his way back to Riley. Dogs are loyal like that, more loyal than people. Crane stared at him. You expect me to believe the dog just wandered into this clearing by coincidence? I expect you to believe whatever you want. But the fact remains, my daughter has her dog back. And in about 30 seconds, she's going to have something else. What are you talking about? Nathan smiled. A real smile, the first one Riley had seen on his face. I'm talking about backup. The first shot came from the north. One of Crane's men went down, clutching his leg, his rifle clattering to the ground. The crack of the gunshot echoed across the clearing, followed immediately by shouting and confusion. Contact north, someone screamed. Shoot her in the trees. More shots. Crane's men scattered for cover, their carefully planned positions suddenly useless against an enemy they could not see. Muzzle flashes sparked in the forest, coming from multiple directions now, as if an entire squad had surrounded them. But Riley knew better. She knew there was only one shooter, Jack Thornton. The old soldier was doing what he did best, creating chaos from nothing, moving through the forest like a ghost, firing from one position, then another, making it seem like there were 10 of him instead of one. Crane grabbed Riley by the arm, using her as a shield, his pistol pressed against her temple. "Nathan, call off your dog or I swear to God." "He is not mine to call off." Nathan had dropped to a crouch, making himself a smaller target. Jack does what Jack wants, always has. Another shot. Another of Crane's men went down. This one hit in the shoulder. The remaining guards were returning fire blindly, spraying bullets into the trees without any clear target. "This changes nothing," Crane shouted, his composure finally cracking. "I still have your daughter. I still have—" Ranger moved. The dog had been crouched beside Riley, seemingly paralyzed by the gunfire. But when Crane pressed the pistol harder against Riley's head, something in Ranger snapped. 70 pounds of muscle and teeth launched at the senator's arm. Crane screamed as Ranger's jaws clamped down on his wrist. The pistol fired wild, the bullet disappearing into the sky. Riley felt herself released as Crane staggered backward, trying to shake off the dog that was tearing into his flesh. "Riley, run!" Nathan was sprinting toward her, decades of survival training driving his body faster than a man his age should be able to move. He reached her in seconds, scooped her up, and carried her toward the tree line. Behind them, Crane had finally kicked Ranger away. The dog yelped but recovered quickly, circling back toward Riley with his hackles raised. Blood dripped from Crane's mangled wrist, but the senator seemed not to notice. His eyes, mad with rage and pain, were fixed on Nathan. "You are not leaving." Crane raised his pistol with his uninjured hand. "Not again. Not ever again." He fired. Nathan felt the impact before he heard the shot. A hammer blow to his left side, just below the ribs. He stumbled, nearly dropped Riley, somehow kept his feet moving toward the trees. Behind him, more shots cracked through the air. Jack providing covering fire. Crane's men returning it. Chaos and noise, and the smell of gunpowder. They reached the tree line. Nathan set Riley down behind a massive oak, his hands already working at the zip ties binding her wrists. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead, but his movements were precise and controlled. "Dad." Riley stared at the dark stain spreading across his shirt. "Dad, you are hit." "I know." He got the zip ties off, tossed them aside. "I have had worse. Can you walk?" "Can I? Dad, you are bleeding." "Riley." He grabbed her face with both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I need you to focus. We have maybe 2 minutes before Crane's men regroup. Jack cannot hold them forever. We need to move." "But—" "I will be fine, I promise. But right now we need to go." He stood, grimacing, one hand pressed against his wounded side. Riley stood with him, her mind reeling, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 60 seconds. Ranger appeared at her side, whining softly, pressing against her leg. She reached down automatically to touch his head. "Good boy," she whispered. "Such a good boy." "This way." Nathan was already moving, weaving through the trees with a speed that seemed impossible for a man who had just been shot. "There is a cave system about a mile north. We can lose them in there." Riley followed, Ranger at her heels. Behind them, the sounds of gunfire slowly faded as Jack continued his one-man war against Crane's forces. They ran for what felt like hours, but was probably closer to 15 minutes. Nathan led them through terrain that would have been difficult even in daylight. Slopes covered in loose shale, ravines choked with fallen timber, streams swollen with recent rain. He moved through it all without hesitation, his internal compass guiding him through a landscape he clearly knew intimately. But Riley could see him weakening. The blood stain on his shirt had spread, now covering most of his left side. His face was ashen, his breathing labored. Every few minutes, he would stumble, catch himself, keep moving. The bullet was still inside him, doing damage with every step. "Dad, we have to stop. You need help." "Not yet." His voice was strained but determined. "Another half mile. There is a shelter. You will bleed to death before we get there. Then I will bleed, but you will be safe." He kept moving. Riley followed, her heart breaking with every step. This was her father. This was the man she had believed abandoned her. And here he was, shot and dying, still putting her safety above his own life. Finally, they reached a rock outcropping that jutted from the mountainside like a broken tooth. Nathan felt along the stone face until he found what he was looking for. A gap, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. "In here!" They squeezed through the narrow entrance into a small cave. It was dark and cold, but dry. Nathan collapsed against the far wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Okay. He fumbled in his pocket, pulled out a small flashlight. Okay, now we can rest. Riley knelt beside him, her hands hovering helplessly over the wound. What do I do? Tell me what to do. Pressure. Nathan guided her hand to his side. Press down, hard. It will hurt, but you need to slow the bleeding. She pressed. He groaned, his face contorting with pain. Sorry, God, I am sorry. Do not apologize. He managed a weak smile. You are doing great. They sat in silence for several minutes, Riley maintaining pressure on the wound while Ranger stood guard at the cave entrance. Then Nathan spoke. I need to tell you something in case, he swallowed hard, in case this does not end well. Dad, do not talk like that. Riley, please, let me say this. She fell silent, tears streaming down her face. Nathan took a breath, wincing at the pain it caused. Everything Crane told you about me is true. I was a killer. I did terrible things for his family. People died because of orders I followed without question. I told myself I was a soldier, just doing my job, but that was a lie. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I just did not have the courage to stop. He paused, gathering strength. When I found those documents in the cave, when I saw the full scope of what the Cranes had done for generations, something broke inside me. I realized I was part of something monstrous, that I had helped them build their empire of blood and secrets, and I knew I had to make it right. So you took the evidence. I took everything. Jack helped me. We thought we could expose them, bring them down, but we were naive. The Cranes had people everywhere. Instead of being heroes, we became fugitives. He looked at Riley, his eyes filled with an anguish that went deeper than physical pain. Then I met your mother, and for a little while, I thought maybe I could have a normal life. Maybe I could outrun my past. But the past always catches up, Riley, always. When the Cranes found out about you, I knew I had to choose. Stay and watch them use you to get to me, or leave and keep you safe. You chose to leave. I chose to protect you. Every day since then, I have wondered if I made the right call. Every birthday I watched from a distance. Every time I saw you crying and could not hold you. I told myself it was necessary, that you were safer without me. But the truth is, his voice broke. The truth is, I was a coward. I ran because it was easier than fighting, easier than risking everything to be your father. And you paid the price for my weakness. And Riley sat very still, processing everything she had heard. Her father, a killer, a coward by his own admission, a man who had done terrible things and spent decades running from the consequences. And also, a man who loved her so much he gave up any chance at a normal life to keep her safe. A man who watched her grow up from a distance because getting close would have meant her death. A man who walked into a firing squad today because he could not bear the thought of losing her. People were complicated. They contained multitudes. I forgive you, she said quietly. Nathan looked at her, disbelief mixing with hope. Riley, I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay. Not because the past does not matter, but because you spent 15 years trying to make it right. Because you are here now, bleeding to death in a cave, when you could have stayed hidden and let Crane have me. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. You are my father. I just found you. I am not ready to lose you again. Nathan's arms came up around her, weak but present. Father and daughter holding each other in the darkness, making up for 15 years of separation in a single moment. Ranger whined softly and pushed his nose against their joined hands. Good dog, Nathan whispered. You brought her to me. Good boy. A sound at the cave entrance made them both tense. Ranger's growl turned into an excited bark as a familiar figure squeezed through the gap. Jack Thornton, looking battered but very much alive, crawled into the cave and collapsed against the wall. Made it, he gasped. Lost them at the river crossing. They will figure it out eventually, but we have maybe an hour. Jack. Nathan's voice was weak but relieved. I thought that I would miss all the fun. Jack managed a tired smile. Not a chance. His eyes fell on Nathan's wound. How bad? Bad enough. Let me see. Jack moved to Nathan's side, taking over from Riley. His experienced hands probed the wound, his face growing grimmer by the second. Bullet is still in there. Probably hit your kidney. You need a hospital, Nathan, soon. Crane has this whole area locked down. We would never make it. Then we find another way. Jack's voice was firm. I did not spend 35 years watching over you to let you die in a cave. You spent 35 years watching over me? Someone had to. You were terrible at taking care of yourself. Jack glanced at Riley. Apple did not fall far from the tree, by the way. Your daughter is just as recklessly brave as you were at her age. Nathan managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. That is what I'm afraid of. Men. They huddled in the cave as Jack outlined their options. None of them were good. Crane had at least a dozen men in the area, all armed, all searching. The nearest hospital was 20 miles away through hostile territory. Nathan was weakening by the minute, blood loss taking its inevitable toll. There is one possibility, Nathan said slowly. The main cache, the one Crane found empty. What about it? It is not actually empty. I moved most of the treasure, yes. But I left something behind, a medical kit, military grade, the kind we used to carry in the field. Jack frowned. Why would you leave that? Because I always knew this day might come. Knew I might need it. Nathan's eyes moved to Riley. There is also a journal. Everything I could not tell you in person. Everything I wanted you to know about me, about your mother, about why I made the choices I made. It is all in there. Dad, that can wait. Right now we need to. It cannot wait. Nathan grabbed her hand with surprising strength. Riley, listen to me. If I do not make it, you are going to make it. If I do not make it, that journal tells you where to find everything. The rest of the evidence, the money, everything you need to destroy the Cranes and build a new life. Promise me you will find it. I promise, but you are going to be there to show me yourself. Nathan smiled weakly. That is my girl, stubborn to the end. And Jack scouted ahead while Riley helped Nathan move. The journey back to the main cave took nearly an hour, moving slowly to avoid Crane's patrols. Twice they had to hide in the underbrush as armed men passed within yards of their position. Ranger proved invaluable, his keen senses alerting them to danger before it appeared. By the time they reached the cave entrance, Nathan could barely stand. Jack had to half carry him inside, lowering him gently to the cave floor. Riley followed with Ranger, her heart pounding as she entered the space where this nightmare had truly begun. The cave was exactly as Crane had described. Empty, the outlines of long-removed crates still visible in the dust. But Jack knew where to look. He went to a specific spot on the wall, felt along the stone, and pressed something hidden in a crack. A section of rock swung inward, revealing a small hidden compartment. Inside, a military medical kit, just as Nathan had promised. And beside it, a leather-bound journal. Jack grabbed the med kit and immediately began working on Nathan. Riley took the journal, her hands trembling, as she opened it to the first page. Her father's handwriting, the same flowing script she remembered from birthday cards when she was very young. The first entry was dated 15 years ago, the day he left. Riley read by flashlight while Jack worked on Nathan. The journal was everything her father had promised and more. Page after page of confession, explanation, and love. He wrote about the day she was born, how he held her in his arms and wept with joy. He wrote about watching her take her first steps, say her first words, become a person. And then he wrote about leaving. I stood outside the house for 3 hours that night, one entry read, watching through the window, trying to memorize every detail of your face. You were sleeping in your crib, so peaceful, so unaware of the danger closing in. I wanted to hold you one last time, wanted to tell you that Daddy loved you more than anything in the world. But I knew if I went inside, I would never be able to leave. And if I did not leave, they would find us both. Riley's tears fell on the pages, blurring the ink. I made a choice that night. Your safety over my happiness. Your future over my presence. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than anything they trained me for. Harder than any mission I ever ran. But I would make the same choice again, 1,000 times, if it meant keeping you alive. She turned the pages, reading through years of loneliness and longing. Birthday entries where he described watching her from a distance. Notes about her achievements, her struggles, her growth. He knew everything. Had been there for everything, invisible, but present. One entry, dated just 6 months ago, caught her attention. The Cranes are getting close. Victor's son, William, has become obsessed. He will not stop until he finds me. I need to prepare for the possibility that I will not survive the confrontation. If that happens, Riley needs to know where to find everything, the evidence, the money, the truth. And then, in the margin, a note that made her breath catch. The key is where Riley's heart goes every year, where she found love when she thought she had none left. Hey, Betwin. Riley stared at the words, her mind racing. where Riley's heart goes every year, where she found love when she thought she had none left. She knew immediately what it meant. The gas station, the abandoned station outside Asheville where she had found Ranger 3 years ago. She went back every year on Ranger's birthday to remember the moment her life had changed, to honor the place where she had found the one creature who loved her without conditions. Her father knew about that tradition. Of course he did. He had been watching her for 15 years. He had hidden something there. The rest of the evidence, the money, everything needed to destroy the Cranes and start a new life. Jack, her voice was urgent. I know where the rest is hidden. Jack looked up from his work on Nathan. He had managed to remove the bullet and was now stitching the wound closed with supplies from the med kit. Nathan was unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. Where? Back in Asheville, a gas station where I found Ranger. My father hid something there. How do you know? She showed him the journal entry. Jack read it, his expression shifting from skepticism to understanding. Nathan always did love his puzzles, he muttered. Hide the most important evidence in a place only Riley would know about. Smart. Can you keep him alive long enough for me to get there and back? Maybe. Probably. He is tougher than he looks. Jack met her eyes. But you cannot go alone, Riley. Crane is still out there. His men are still looking for us. I have to try. That evidence is the only thing that can end this. The only thing that can make us safe. Jack was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Take Ranger. He will protect you. And take this. He pressed something into her hand. A pistol, small but deadly. I hope you do not have to use it, but if you do not hesitate. Riley knelt beside her father before she left. He was still unconscious, his face pale and drawn, but his chest rose and fell with steady breaths. Jack had done good work. If nothing else went wrong, Nathan would survive. But things could always go wrong. I have to go, she whispered, not sure if he could hear her. I have to finish what you started, but I will be back. I promise. I will be back, and we will have the life you always wanted for us, together. She kissed his forehead, feeling the cool clamminess of his skin. Then she stood, squared her shoulders, and headed for the cave entrance. Ranger fell into step beside her, his presence a comfort in the darkness. The dog seemed to sense the importance of what they were doing. His usual playfulness was gone, replaced by a focused alertness that reminded Riley why German shepherds were used as military and police dogs. At the cave entrance, she paused and looked back. Jack was watching her, his scarred face unreadable in the dim light. Be careful, he said. Nathan did not spend 15 years protecting you just so you could get killed on a supply run. I will be careful. And Riley? He hesitated. Your father is proud of you. I know he is not conscious to say it, but I have known that man for 40 years. I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Riley felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back. Take care of him, Jack. With my life. She turned and walked out of the cave, into the forest, toward a destiny she was only beginning to understand. The forest at night was a different world. Shadows moved and shifted with every breath of wind. Sounds carried strangely, amplified by the silence until a snapping twig sounded like a gunshot. The temperature had dropped, and Riley's breath misted in the air as she walked. She moved carefully, using everything Jack and her father had taught her. Staying off trails, avoiding open ground, using the terrain for cover. Ranger padded beside her, his ears constantly swiveling, his nose testing the wind for threats. It took 3 hours to reach the edge of the forest. By then, dawn was beginning to lighten the eastern sky. Riley crouched behind a fallen log and studied the landscape ahead. Open farmland, then a 2-lane road, then the outskirts of a small town. Beyond that, maybe 20 miles, lay Asheville and the abandoned gas station. She could not walk the whole way. Even if she had the energy, it would take too long. Her father was dying in a cave, and every minute counted. She needed transportation. The farm ahead had several vehicles parked near a weathered barn. Trucks mostly, the kind rural people use for hauling equipment and livestock. One of them had to have keys inside. In places like this, people still trusted their neighbors. Stay close, she whispered to Ranger, and stay quiet. They crept across the open ground, moving from shadow to shadow. The farmhouse was dark, its occupants still asleep. Riley's heart pounded as she approached the nearest truck, an old Ford that looked like it had seen better decades. The door was unlocked. She slid inside, holding her breath, and felt around the steering column. Nothing. She checked the sun visor, the center console, the glove compartment. The keys were in the glove compartment, hanging on a small hook as if waiting for her. Riley started the truck, wincing at the noise of the engine, and pulled out of the farm as quickly as she dared. In the rearview mirror, she saw a light come on in the farmhouse. Too late. She was already on the road, heading toward Asheville, toward the answers her father had hidden 15 years ago. Itam. The abandoned station looked exactly as Riley remembered. A single-story building with boarded windows and a sagging roof, two rusted fuel pumps standing like sentinels in the cracked concrete lot. Weeds pushing through every crack, nature slowly reclaiming what humans had abandoned. She parked the truck behind the building, out of sight from the road, and approached the entrance with Ranger at her side. The pistol Jack had given her was in her hand, its weight both reassuring and terrifying. The front door was padlocked, but Riley knew another way in. Around the back, a window had been broken years ago. She had used it to get inside when she found Ranger, and she used it again now. The interior smelled of dust and motor oil and the faint tang of old gasoline. She clicked on her flashlight and swept it across the space. Counter, shelves, empty coolers with glass doors so dirty you could barely see through them. And in the back, behind a shelf that had collapsed years ago, a door. The basement. Riley moved the shelf aside, her shoulder screaming in protest, and opened the door. Wooden stairs descended into darkness. She could hear water dripping somewhere below, a steady rhythm that seemed almost musical. "Stay here, boy," she told Ranger. "Guard the door." The dog whined but obeyed, sitting at the top of the stairs with his ears pricked forward. Riley descended into the darkness. The basement was smaller than she expected, maybe 15 feet square, with a low ceiling that forced her to duck. Pipes ran along the walls, some of them leaking the water she had heard from above. The floor was concrete, cracked and stained with decades of neglect. In one corner, covered by an old tarp that had once been blue but was now mostly gray with grime, was a shape. Riley pulled back the tarp. A safe, heavy-duty, fireproof, the kind designed to survive disasters. And on its surface, written in permanent marker that had faded but not disappeared, were words in her father's handwriting. "For Riley, the password is the day you found Ranger." Her hands trembled as she knelt before the safe. The day she found Ranger, his birthday essentially, the day her life changed. She entered the date and heard the lock click open. Inside the safe, a portable hard drive, a stack of documents an inch thick, a VHS tape, old and worn, and a letter. Riley opened the letter first. "My darling daughter," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I am either dead or dying. Either way, I am sorry. Sorry for leaving. Sorry for all the years we lost. Sorry for not being the father you deserved. In this safe is everything you need. The hard drive contains digitized copies of all the evidence against the Crane family. The documents are originals that cannot be disputed. The tape is a recording of William Crane himself, made 10 years ago, admitting to covering up a murder. Together, these items will destroy the Cranes. They will bring justice for everyone that family has hurt over the past century and a half, but they will also expose my own crimes, what I did, who I hurt, the monster I used to be. You have a choice, Riley. You can release everything and let the truth come out, even the parts that hurt. Or you can burn it all and walk away, start a new life somewhere far from here. Whatever you choose, I will love you. I have always loved you. From the moment you were born to the moment I die, you are my heart, my soul, my reason for everything. Your father, Nathan." Riley was gathering the contents of the safe when she heard Ranger bark. Not a warning bark, an excited bark. Then a voice, familiar and unexpected, called down the stairs. "Hello, cousin." Riley's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice, had grown up hearing it at family gatherings and holidays, had shared secrets with its owner, trusted her with personal stories and private pain. Emma, Aunt Martha's daughter, Riley's 17-year-old cousin, the girl she had considered her only friend in a family of cold strangers. Riley climbed the basement stairs slowly, the pistol in one hand, the evidence tucked inside her jacket. When she reached the top, she found Emma standing in the middle of the gas station, a gun of her own pointed directly at Riley's chest. Ranger was crouched nearby, confused and distressed. He knew Emma, had played with her at family events. He did not understand why the humans were pointing weapons at each other. "Emma," Riley's voice was steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "What are you doing here? What do you think?" Emma's pretty face was twisted with an expression Riley had never seen before. hatred, pure and undiluted. I followed you. I have been following you since you left the forest. How did you? Senator Crane has people everywhere, Riley, even in our family. Emma laughed bitterly. Did you really think Aunt Martha was the only one working for him? I have been passing information for 2 years. Every conversation we had, every secret you shared, went straight to his people. Riley felt the betrayal like a physical blow. Emma, her cousin, her friend, the one person in her family she had trusted. Why? Wait, Emma's voice rose. Because I am sick of living in your shadow. Poor Riley. Always so sane, always so pitiful. Everyone feeling sorry for you because your mommy died and your daddy left. Nobody ever cared about me. Nobody ever asked how I felt. Emma, that is not true. Shut up. Emma's hands shook, making the gun wobble dangerously. You do not get to make excuses. You do not get to pretend you cared. All those years I was invisible. Just Martha's daughter, nothing special. But then Senator Crane came along and suddenly I mattered. Suddenly someone was paying attention to me. He is using you. He is paying me, Emma spat. Paying me more money than I have ever seen. Enough to get out of this pathetic town, away from my pathetic family, and start a real life somewhere else. Riley looked at her cousin, really looked, and she saw something she had never noticed before. Pain, deep, festering pain that had been growing for years. The pain of feeling invisible, unimportant, unloved. Riley knew that pain, had carried her own version of it for most of her life. Emma, she said softly, I understand, I do. Feeling like nobody sees you, like nobody cares. But this is not the answer. Crane is a murderer. He has killed people. He tried to kill me. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe I did. But do you deserve to be a part of that? Do you deserve to become a killer too? Emma's gun wavered. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, uncertainty. Then she hardened again. Give me the evidence. Whatever you found in that safe, give it to me and I will let you walk away. You know that is not true. Crane does not leave witnesses. Then I guess we have a problem. They stood facing each other, two girls who had once been friends, now separated by guns and betrayal. Riley's mind raced through options. She could shoot Emma, but the thought made her physically ill. Despite everything, this was still her cousin. Still the girl she had grown up with, shared secrets with, loved in her own complicated way. She could surrender the evidence, but that would doom her father, doom Jack, doom any chance of justice. Or she could try something desperate. Emma, she said carefully, Senator Crane promised you money, security, a new life. But let me ask you something. What happens after? What do you mean? After you give him the evidence, after he has what he wants, what happens to you? Emma hesitated. He pays me. I leave. Does he? Think about it, Emma. You know about his crimes now. You have seen his face, heard his plans, helped him hunt people. Do you really think he is going to let you walk around internet with all that information in your head? He promised. Men like Crane do not keep promises to people like us. Riley took a small step forward. We are tools to him, useful while we serve a purpose, disposable when we do not. The moment you give him what he wants, you become a loose end. And you have seen how he deals with loose ends. Emma's face had gone pale. The gun in her hand dropped a few inches. You are lying. You are just trying to save yourself. I am trying to save both of us. Riley took another step. Emma, I am sorry. I am sorry you felt invisible. I am sorry I was not a better cousin, a better friend. But killing me will not fix any of that. It will just turn you into something you cannot come back from. Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. The gun dropped further. I do not know what to do. Yes, you do. Riley reached out slowly, carefully, and took the gun from Emma's unresisting fingers. You let me finish this, and then we figure out the rest together. Emma collapsed against her, sobbing. Riley held her, feeling the storm of emotions shaking her cousin's body. Behind them, Ranger whined and pressed against their legs, confused but wanting to offer comfort. For a long moment, they stood there. Two broken girls in an abandoned gas station, surrounded by decades of secrets and pain. Then Riley heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Through the dirty windows, she saw them. Black SUVs, 3 of them, pulling into the gas station lot. Men in tactical gear pouring out, weapons ready. And stepping out of the lead vehicle, his wounded arm in a sling, his face twisted with pain and determination. Senator William Crane. He had found them. Riley acted on instinct. She grabbed Emma, pulled her toward the back of the station, toward the broken window she had used to enter. Ranger bounded ahead, clearing the way. "Move," Riley hissed. "Back window, now!" They scrambled through just as the front door burst open. Shots rang out, bullets shattering what was left of the window glass. Riley ran across the overgrown lot behind the station, through a hole in the fence, into a narrow alley between abandoned buildings. Crane's men were behind them, but Riley had the advantage of knowing this area. She had explored it many times during her annual visits to Ranger's birthplace. She knew the shortcuts, the hiding spots, the places where an adult could not follow. "This way!" She led Emma through a gap in a crumbling wall into what had once been a warehouse. Ranger squeezed through after them, panting but alert. Behind them, shouts and footsteps. Crane's voice calling out orders. "Find them! Search everything!" Riley kept moving, deeper into the maze of abandoned buildings. Her mind was racing, trying to formulate a plan. She had the evidence. She had escaped the immediate danger. But Crane was still out there, still hunting, still determined to end this once and for all. And her father was dying in a cave 20 miles away. She needed help, real help, the kind that could stand up to a senator with unlimited resources and a private army. She needed to go public. Sorry you found it again. The screen faded to black. Text appeared. Part 4, The Reckoning. Riley Dawson had the evidence that could destroy a dynasty. But William Crane was closing in. And somewhere in the mountains, her father was fighting for his life. The final battle was about to begin. The warehouse smelled of rust and decay. Riley crouched behind a stack of rotting pallets. Emma pressed close beside her, Ranger lying flat with his ears pinned back. Through gaps in the corrugated metal walls, she could see flashlight beams cutting through the darkness outside. Crane's men, searching systematically, getting closer with every passing minute. Her mind raced through options, none of them good. The evidence was secure inside her jacket, pressed against her ribs like a second heartbeat. The hard drive, the documents, the tape. Everything her father had spent 15 years protecting. Everything she needed to destroy the Crane dynasty and free her family from this nightmare. But none of it mattered if she could not get out of this warehouse alive. "How many?" Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Riley peered through a crack in the wall. "6 that I can see, maybe more. We cannot fight 6 armed men." "I know." Ranger whined softly, sensing the tension. Riley reached down to stroke his head, drawing comfort from his warm presence. Think like Dad would think. Her father had spent decades evading the Cranes. He had survived impossible situations, escaped traps that should have been inescapable. He had done it through preparation, through knowing the terrain, through always having a backup plan. Riley did not have a backup plan, but she did have something her father never had. She had a phone, Emma's phone to be precise, still in her cousin's pocket, miraculously undamaged despite their frantic flight. "Give me your phone," Riley said. Emma hesitated, then handed it over. "Who are you going to call?" "Someone who can help." Riley scrolled through her father's journal in her mind, remembering a name mentioned several times. A journalist Nathan had contacted years ago, someone who had been investigating the Cranes independently, someone who was waiting for exactly this kind of evidence. Michael Donovan, The New York Times. She had memorized the number from the journal, had filed it away without knowing if she would ever need it. Now she needed it? The phone rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. "Donovan." "Mr. Donovan, my name is Riley Dawson. I am Nathan Dawson's daughter." Silence on the line. Then slowly, "I have been waiting 20 years for this call. I have evidence. Everything my father collected about the Crane family. Documents, recordings, photographs. Enough to bring them down completely." "Where are you?" "Asheville, an abandoned industrial area on the east side of town. Senator Crane has men searching for me right now. I do not have much time." More silence. Riley could almost hear Donovan thinking, calculating, weighing risks and rewards. "There is a diner called Maggie's about 2 miles west of the industrial district. Open 24 hours. Can you get there?" "I think so. I am in Charlotte. I can be there in 3 hours. Stay hidden until I arrive." And Riley, "Yes? Your father is a good man. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. He has been trying to do the right thing for 35 years. Not many people have that kind of persistence." The line went dead. Riley handed the phone back to Emma. "We have a meeting point. 2 miles west. How do we get past them?" Riley looked at Ranger. The dog looked back at her with intelligent eyes, waiting for direction. "We do not go past them," she said. "We go under them." It's on. Every old industrial area had secrets, hidden passages, forgotten infrastructure, the bones of a previous era buried beneath the modern surface. Riley had discovered one such secret during her explorations of this area. A drainage tunnel that ran beneath the entire district, built decades ago to channel rainwater away from the factories. It was cramped, dark, and probably home to things she did not want to think about. But it led directly to the other side of the district. She found the entrance behind a collapsed loading dock, a concrete pipe maybe 4 feet in diameter, half filled with stagnant water and decades of accumulated debris. "You cannot be serious," Emma said, staring at the tunnel with horror. "Would you rather face Crane's men?" Emma looked back toward the warehouse, where flashlight beams were now sweeping through the windows. She swallowed hard. "Lead the way." Riley went first, dropping to her hands and knees in the cold water. Ranger splashed in after her, his body low, his nose twitching at the unfamiliar smells. Emma brought up the rear, making small sounds of disgust as she crawled through the muck. The tunnel was worse than Riley remembered. The water was deeper now, recent rains having flooded the system. It came up to her elbows, icy cold, carrying the stench of stagnant water and decomposing organic matter. Things brushed against her in the darkness, things she chose not to identify. But she kept moving, hand over hand, knee after knee, foot after foot, moving through the darkness toward a distant point of gray light that marked the tunnel's exit. Behind her, she could hear Emma crying softly, could hear Ranger's panting breath echoing off the concrete walls, could hear her own heartbeat, loud and fast, the rhythm of survival. It took 20 minutes to reach the other end, 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. When Riley finally emerged into the pre-dawn light, gasping for clean air, covered in filth but alive, she allowed herself one moment of relief. Then she started moving again. Maggie's was exactly what its name suggested. A small-town diner, the kind that had been serving coffee and eggs to truckers and insomniacs for 50 years. Red vinyl booths worn smooth by countless customers, a counter lined with stools, a jukebox in the corner that probably still played songs from the 70s. Riley cleaned up as best she could in the restroom, washing the worst of the tunnel muck from her face and hands. Emma did the same, moving mechanically, still in shock from everything that had happened. They took a booth in the back corner, where Riley could watch both the entrance and the parking lot. Ranger lay under the table, finally able to rest after hours of running and hiding. The waitress, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, brought them coffee without being asked. "You girls look like you have had a rough night," she observed. "You have no idea," Riley said. The waitress nodded, the way people do when they have seen too much to be surprised by anything. "Let me know if you need anything else." She walked away, and Riley finally allowed herself to breathe. 3 hours. They had to stay hidden for 3 hours until Donovan arrived. 3 hours while Crane's men searched the city. 3 hours while her father lay bleeding in a cave 20 miles away. "Tell me about Nathan," Emma said suddenly. "Your father, what is he really like?" Riley looked at her cousin, surprised by the question. "I barely know him, I just met him yesterday." "But you went through all this to save him. There has to be a reason." Riley thought about it, thought about the journal entries she had read, the letters, the photographs of her that Nathan had kept, documenting 15 years of watching from a distance. "He is broken," she said finally. "He did terrible things when he was young, things that still haunt him. But he spent his whole life trying to make up for them, trying to protect people, even when it cost him everything." She paused, feeling the weight of understanding settling over her. "He could have forgotten about me, could have started a new life somewhere far away, never looked back. But he did not. He stayed close, watched over me, gave up any chance at happiness, because he could not stand the thought of leaving me unprotected." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "I do not have anyone like that," she said softly. "No one who would sacrifice everything for me." "Yes, you do." Riley reached across the table and took her cousin's hand. "You have me." Michael Donovan arrived exactly when he said he would. He was not what Riley expected. In her mind, she had pictured someone slick and polished, the stereotypical image of a big city reporter. Instead, she found a heavy-set man in his late 50s, with gray hair that needed cutting and a rumpled jacket that had seen better years. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, the eyes of someone who had spent decades digging for truth. He slid into the booth across from Riley, ordered coffee from the passing waitress, and got straight to business. Show me what you have. Riley pulled the documents from inside her jacket, the hard drive, the tape, everything she had recovered from the gas station safe. Donovan examined each item carefully, his expression growing more intense with every page he read. My God, he breathed. This is everything. Murder, corruption, conspiracy, going back 150 years. He looked up at Riley. Your father was sitting on a nuclear bomb. He wanted to make sure it went off at the right time, when it could do the most damage. And now? Now Senator Crane has tried to kill me twice. He shot my father. He has men hunting us through the streets of Asheville. Riley leaned forward. I want to end this, Mr. Donovan. I want to blow up his entire world. Donovan was quiet for a moment, studying her face. You understand what that means. Once this goes public, there is no taking it back. The Cranes will be destroyed, but so will anyone connected to them, including, potentially, your father. I know. He knows too. He wrote about it in his letter. Riley squared her shoulders. Some things are more important than protecting yourself. Donovan smiled, a tired smile, but genuine. Nathan said almost exactly the same thing to me 20 years ago. He gathered the documents, slipped the hard drive into his pocket. Give me 24 hours. I need to verify the most damaging items, make sure they will hold up to scrutiny. Then I release everything simultaneously. Print, digital, broadcast. By this time tomorrow, William Crane will be the most wanted man in America. What about now? Crane is still out there. My father is wounded in a cave in the mountains. We need help. Donovan pulled out his phone. I have contacts in the FBI, real ones, not Crane's people. I can have agents on the ground within an hour. He paused. But Riley, you need to understand something. Once the feds get involved, this becomes official. Arrests, trials, testimony. You and your father will be at the center of it all. Your lives will never be the same. Riley thought about the cabin in the trees, the gold coins, the 15 years of loneliness and fear. Our lives were never going to be normal anyway, she said. At least this way, we get to stop running. Ethan. While Donovan made his calls, Riley borrowed his phone to reach Jack. The old soldier answered on the second ring, his voice tense with worry. Who is this? Jack, it is Riley. I am safe. I found the evidence. I made contact with Donovan. A long exhale of relief. Thank God, we were worried sick. How is my father? Silence. The kind of silence that spoke louder than words. Jack, how is he? Stable. For now. Jack's voice was carefully neutral. The bullet did more damage than we thought. He needs proper surgery, Riley. A real hospital with real doctors. I can only do so much with a field kit. Help is coming. FBI agents, they will have medical support. That is good, that is... Jack paused. There is something else you need to know. What? Crane found us. Riley's blood turned to ice. What? About an hour ago, we had to move to a secondary location. I do not think he knows exactly where we are, but he is close. He has men sweeping the forest. Can you hold them off? For a while, Nathan is conscious now. He is asking for you. Riley's throat tightened. Tell him I am coming. Tell him help is on the way. Tell him what? Tell him I love him and that I am going to finish what he started. Ometagram. 20 miles away, in a cave that smelled of blood and fear, Nathan Dawson drifted in and out of consciousness. The pain was a constant companion now. A burning ache in his side that flared with every breath, every movement, every heartbeat. Jack had done his best with the limited supplies available, but Nathan knew his body was failing, knew that without proper medical care, he had hours, maybe a day at most. But he refused to die until he knew Riley was safe. Nathan? Jack's voice came from somewhere nearby. You need to rest. Cannot rest, not until... She is fine, I just talked to her. She made contact with Donovan. The FBI is on their way. Nathan opened his eyes. The cave swam into focus, dimly lit by a small battery-powered lantern. Jack crouched beside him, his scarred face lined with worry. The evidence? Safe. She got everything from the gas station cache. Donovan is verifying it now. 24 hours and it all goes public. Nathan felt something loosen in his chest. Not the pain, that was still there, burning and insistent, but something else. The weight he had carried for 35 years slowly beginning to lift. It is over then, he whispered. Finally over. Not quite. Jack's voice was grim. Crane knows we are in this area. He has men searching. Sooner or later, they will find this cave. How long? Hours, maybe less. Nathan tried to sit up, gasped as pain lanced through his side. Jack pushed him back down. Save your strength. You are in no condition to fight. Then give me a gun and prop me up. If Crane wants me, he can come and get me. But I am not dying on my back like a sick dog. Jack studied his old friend for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. Still the same stubborn bastard I met 40 years ago. Damn right. Jack handed him a pistol. Nathan's fingers wrapped around the grip with familiar ease, finding comfort in the weight of the weapon. Help me to the entrance, he said. If this is my last stand, I want to see it coming. It's fast, Ram. Senator William Crane stood at the edge of the forest, staring at the mountain that had become his obsession. His wounded arm throbbed despite the painkillers. His men were exhausted, having searched through the night without rest. His carefully constructed world was beginning to crumble around him. And still Nathan Dawson eluded him. Sir, Peterson approached hesitantly. We have covered most of the eastern quadrant. No sign of them. Then cover it again and expand the search to the northern slopes. Sir, the men are tired. Some of them are suggesting we pull back. Wait for... Pull back? Crane rounded on his subordinate, eyes blazing. Pull back? I have spent 35 years hunting this man. 35 years watching my family suffer, my father die, my legacy crumble. And you want me to pull back? Peterson took a step backward. Sir, I only meant... I know what you meant. Crane turned back to the mountain, his voice dropping to something cold and final. Nathan Dawson is up there somewhere, wounded, dying, and I am going to find him. I am going to look into his eyes when I pull the trigger. I am going to end this the way my father should have ended it 30 years ago. And if the FBI arrives before we find him, Crane smiled, a thin, humorless expression that did not reach his eyes. The FBI will not find anything but bodies. By the time anyone realizes what happened, we will be gone, and Nathan Dawson's evidence will disappear, just like he will. He pulled a satellite phone from his pocket and dialed a number. This is Crane. I need the cleanup team. Full protocol, no witnesses. Back at the diner, Riley faced the hardest choice of her life. Donovan had left to begin the verification process. Emma sat across from her, exhausted but alert. FBI agents were en route, would arrive within the hour. By all logic, Riley should stay put, wait for the professionals, let them handle the rescue. But her father was dying in a cave 20 miles away, and Crane was closing in. You are thinking about going after him, Emma said. It was not a question. He is my father. The FBI will be here soon. They can arrive too late. Riley stood up, her decision made. Jack is one man against who knows how many. My father is wounded, maybe dying. I cannot sit here and do nothing while they are out there fighting alone. Then I am coming with you. Riley looked at her cousin. Emma's face was pale, her hands still shaking from the night's ordeals. But there was something new in her eyes, something that looked like determination. Emma, you do not have to. Yes, I do. Emma stood up as well. I helped Crane. I gave him information that put you in danger. I almost got you killed. Her voice cracked. I need to make this right, Riley. I need to prove that I am not the person I was becoming. Riley studied her cousin for a long moment. Then she nodded. There is a truck in the parking lot. I hotwired one earlier tonight. I can do it again. You know how to hotwire a truck? There is a lot about me you do not know. Riley managed a small smile. Come on, we have a long drive ahead. Come on. The drive took almost an hour, through sleeping suburbs, past darkened farmland, into the mountains that had become the setting for so much tragedy. Riley drove while Emma navigated using a map Jack had given her earlier, marked with the approximate location of the secondary cave. Ranger sat in the back seat, alert and watchful, as if he understood the importance of what they were doing. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the first gray light of dawn began to color the eastern horizon. A new day was coming. Riley hoped her father would live to see it. There, Emma pointed to a turnoff that was almost invisible in the pre-dawn darkness. That should lead to the Forest Service road Jack mentioned. Riley turned the truck onto the dirt track, wincing as branches scraped against the sides of the vehicle. The road, if it could be called that, wound upward through dense forest, growing rougher with every mile. Finally, the truck could go no further. A fallen tree blocked the path, too large to drive around. We walk from here, Riley said. They grabbed what supplies they could carry and started up the mountain. Ranger bounded ahead, and his nose to the ground following a scent only he could detect. The forest was awakening around them, birds beginning their morning songs, small animals rustling in the underbrush, the smell of pine and damp earth filling the air. Under other circumstances, it would have been beautiful.
Yes,
They heard the shooting before they saw anything. Distant at first, then closer. The sharp crack of rifles, the deeper boom of a shotgun. The sounds of battle echoing through the mountain valleys. Riley broke into a run. Branches whipped at her face. Rocks threatened to turn her ankles. Her lungs burned from the altitude and the exertion. But she kept moving, following the sounds of combat toward whatever nightmare awaited. She burst through a thick stand of rhododendrons and found herself at the edge of a small clearing. The scene before her would stay with her forever. Jack Thornton crouched behind a fallen log, a rifle in his hands, firing methodically at targets she could not see. Blood soaked his left sleeve where a bullet had grazed him, but he moved with the precision of a man half his age. And behind him, propped against a rock with a pistol in his hand, was Nathan Dawson, her father. He looked terrible. His face was gray, his clothing soaked with blood, his body trembling with the effort of staying upright. But his eyes were clear and focused, and when he saw Riley emerge from the trees, something lit up in them that made all the fear and pain worthwhile. Riley, her name on his lips was a prayer. Dad? She ran to him, dropping to her knees beside the rock. Up close, he looked even worse. His skin was clammy, his breathing shallow. The bandages Jack had applied were soaked through. You should not be here, Nathan said weakly. Too dangerous. I could not leave you. The evidence, did you? Donovan has it. It goes public tomorrow. Everything. Riley took his hand, felt how cold it was. It is over, Dad. We won. Nathan smiled. A real smile, despite the pain, despite everything. No, he said, not yet, but soon. A bullet struck the rock inches from Riley's head, showering them both with stone fragments. Down, Jack shouted. Riley threw herself flat, pulling her father with her. More bullets whizzed overhead, seeking targets. How many? She called to Jack. 8, maybe 10. They have us pinned from 3 sides. Where's the 4th side? Cliff face, 50-foot drop. So that was it. Surrounded on 3 sides, a cliff at their backs. Wounded, outnumbered, running out of time and options. Riley looked at her father, saw him looking back at her with eyes full of love and regret. I am sorry, he whispered, for all of it, for leaving, for everything you went through, for bringing you into this. You did not bring me into anything. Crane did. Riley squeezed his hand, and we are going to make him pay. Emma had hung back at the edge of the clearing, paralyzed by fear. She watched Riley run to her father, watched Jack trading fire with unseen enemies, watched bullets tear through the air where people she cared about were hiding. This was her fault, all of it. If she had not helped Crane, had not fed him information, had not betrayed her own family for money and attention, none of this would be happening. Riley would be safe. Nathan would be getting medical care. Jack would not be bleeding from a bullet wound. The weight of that guilt pressed down on her, threatening to crush her. She could run, could disappear into the forest, leave this nightmare behind, pretend none of it ever happened. But then she thought about Riley, about the cousin who had forgiven her even after learning about the betrayal, who had said she cared about her, believed in her, wanted to help her become better. Riley had given her a second chance, had refused to abandon her even when abandonment was the smart choice. Emma could not run, would not run. She looked around, searching for something, anything that could help. Her eyes fell on a rocky outcropping about 50 yards to the left, overlooking the positions where Crane's men had taken cover. If someone could get up there with a weapon, she did not have a weapon, but she did have something else. Her phone, and several minutes of video footage she had recorded while working with Crane. Footage of him giving orders, discussing plans, talking about people he wanted eliminated. If that footage got into the wrong hands, Crane would be finished. And more importantly, if Crane knew the footage existed, knew it could be released at any moment, he might hesitate, might be willing to negotiate. Emma pulled out her phone and started recording. Crane! Emma's voice rang out across the clearing, amplified by the mountain acoustics. Senator Crane, I know you can hear me. The gunfire stopped. Riley stared at her cousin in disbelief. Emma had stepped out from behind her cover, standing in the open, phone held up like a shield. Emma, get down, Riley shouted. I have something you want to see, Senator, Emma continued, ignoring her cousin. Video footage of you ordering murders, discussing cover-ups, admitting to crimes that would destroy your career, your family, your entire life. Silence fell over the clearing. Even the birds had stopped singing. Then from somewhere in the trees, Crane's voice. You are bluffing. Am I? You remember that conversation in your study 2 weeks ago? When you talked about eliminating loose ends after this was over? When you mentioned my name specifically? More silence. Emma could almost hear Crane calculating, weighing risks. What do you want? I want you to let them go. Riley, her father, Jack, all of them. You and your men walk away. In exchange, I give you this phone and promise to forget everything I know about your organization. And why would I believe you? Because I am a coward, Senator. You said so yourself. I do not have the courage to fight you, to testify against you, to do anything that might put me in danger. Emma's voice cracked, but she kept going. All I want is to survive. Let them go and I disappear. Everyone gets what they want. Another long pause. Send the girl out first, Riley, then we will talk. Riley started to stand, but Nathan grabbed her arm with surprising strength. No, it is a trap. I know, Riley met her father's eyes, but it might buy us time. Time for what? As if in answer, a new sound filled the air. Helicopters, multiple rotors getting closer. Donovan had come through. Men, the FBI helicopters appeared over the ridge like avenging angels. 3 of them, blackened against the lightning sky, their rotors beating a rhythm of salvation. Spotlights cut through the dawn darkness, illuminating the clearing, the trees, the positions where Crane's men had been hiding. A voice boomed from one of the helicopters, amplified by loudspeaker. This is the FBI. You are surrounded. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands raised. Chaos erupted among Crane's men. Some of them threw down their guns immediately, knowing better than to fight federal agents. Others tried to run only to find their escape routes cut off by agents who had repelled from the helicopters. And Senator William Crane stood in the middle of it all, watching his empire collapse around him. Riley saw him through a gap in the rocks, saw the way his shoulders slumped, the way his wounded arm hung limply at his side, the way all the arrogance and certainty drained out of his posture. He looked old suddenly, broken, a man who had spent 35 years chasing vengeance, only to find nothing at the end but defeat. Part of her wanted to feel satisfaction. After everything he had done, everything he had tried to do, he deserved this moment of humiliation. But mostly she just felt tired. It is over, she said more to herself than anyone else. It is finally over. Medical teams were on the ground within minutes. They swarmed around Nathan, hooking up IV lines, checking vital signs, preparing him for transport. Riley stayed by his side through all of it, holding his hand, refusing to be moved. You need to let them work, one of the paramedics said gently. I am not leaving him. Nathan squeezed her hand weakly. Go, I will be fine. You do not know that. I know I am too stubborn to die when I just got my daughter back. He managed a ghost of a smile. Go talk to the FBI. Tell them everything. Finish what we started. Riley hesitated, torn between her duty and her heart. I will be right there when you wake up, she said finally. Right there, I promise. I know you will. They loaded him onto a stretcher, carried him toward the waiting helicopter. Riley watched until he was out of sight, then turned to face the chaos around her. Jack was sitting on a rock, letting a medic tend to his wounded arm. Emma stood nearby, surrounded by FBI agents, answering questions with a shell-shocked expression. Ranger had found his way to Riley's side and was pressing against her leg, offering silent comfort. And across the clearing, being led away in handcuffs, was Senator William Crane. He looked at Riley as he passed. Their eyes met for a single moment. She expected to see hatred there, rage, the burning obsession that had driven him for 35 years. Instead, she saw something that looked at almost like relief. It is over, he said quietly, finally over. Then he was gone, loaded into a helicopter, carried away to face justice for crimes that span generations. They flew Nathan to Mission Hospital in Asheville. Riley rode in the same helicopter, refusing to be separated from her father even for the 20-minute flight. She held his hand the entire way, watching the monitors, praying the numbers would stay stable. When they landed, a surgical team was waiting. Multiple organ damage, one of the doctors announced after a quick assessment. He needs surgery immediately. They wheeled Nathan away through doors that Riley was not allowed to follow. She stood in the hallway, covered in blood and mud and tunnel muck, watching those doors swing closed on her father. Ranger sat beside her, whining softly. He's going to be okay, a voice said behind her. Riley turned to find Jack standing there, his arm freshly bandaged, his face gray with exhaustion. How do you know? Because Nathan Dawson is the toughest son of a bitch I have ever met. He survived 35 years on the run. He survived a gunshot that should have killed him. He is not going to die now, not when he finally has something to live for. Riley wanted to believe him, wanted it more than she had ever wanted anything. I barely know him, she said, her voice cracking. I just found him. I cannot lose him again. You will not. Jack put his good arm around her shoulders. Whatever happens, you will not be alone. Nathan made me promise years ago that if anything ever happened to him, I would look after you. I intend to keep that promise. They stood together in the hospital hallway waiting for news, hoping for a miracle. The surgery took 7 hours. 7 hours of pacing, of drinking bad coffee, of watching the clock tick slowly forward. Emma joined them after being released by the FBI, her statement given, her role in the events documented. She sat in a corner of the waiting room, pale and quiet, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Riley should have been angry at her cousin. Part of her was, still, beneath the exhaustion and worry. But the larger part recognized that Emma had tried to make things right, had put herself at risk to buy them time, had chosen in the end to stand with her family instead of against them. That had to count for something. Around noon, Michael Donovan arrived. It is done, he said without preamble. The story breaks tomorrow morning. Print, digital, broadcast, everything. By this time tomorrow, the whole world will know what the Crane family did. And my father's involvement? Donovan hesitated. That will come out too. There is no way to tell the story without including his role. He paused. But the FBI has already indicated they are willing to offer immunity in exchange for his testimony. Nathan spent 35 years gathering evidence against the Cranes. He is the best witness they have. So he will not go to prison? Probably not. The statute of limitations has run out on most of what he did anyway, and the prosecutors are more interested in the Cranes than in ancient history. Riley nodded, feeling some of the weight lift from her shoulders. Thank you, she said, for believing him, for waiting all those years. Donovan smiled. Some stories are worth waiting for. Nathan woke up at 3:47 in the afternoon. Riley was there when his eyes opened, just as she had promised. She had pulled a chair up to his bed, had been sitting there for hours watching him breathe, counting each rise and fall of his chest as proof that he was still alive. Hey, she said softly. His eyes focused on her slowly, confusion giving way to recognition, recognition giving way to wonder. You are here. I told you I would be. I thought, he swallowed hard. I thought I dreamed it. All of it. You finding me, us escaping, everything. It was real, all of it. Riley took his hand, marveling at how warm it was now, how much stronger than before. Crane is in custody. The story breaks tomorrow. It is over, Dad. Really over. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. I have imagined this moment for 15 years. What I would say to you if I ever got the chance. How I would explain, apologize, try to make up for all the time we lost. You do not have to. Yes, I do. He squeezed her hand. Riley, I am sorry. I am sorry for leaving. I am sorry for every birthday I missed. Every terror I could not wipe away. Every moment you needed a father and found only absence. I told myself I was protecting you, and I was, but I was also running. Running from my past, from my guilt, from the man I used to be. Tears were streaming down his face now, and down Riley's. I do not expect you to forgive me. What I did, what I put you through, it is not the kind of thing you can just forgive and forget. But I want you to know that I loved you every single day. Even when I could not be there, even when I could not show it, I loved you with everything I had. Riley leaned forward and pressed her forehead against her father's. I forgive you, she whispered. I forgave you in that cave. I will keep forgiving you every day for the rest of our lives. Nathan's arms came up around her, weak but present. Father and daughter holding each other, making up for 15 years of separation in a single embrace. I love you, Dad, Riley said. I love you too, baby girl, more than anything in the world. The story broke the next morning, just as Donovan promised. It was everywhere. Front pages, news channels, social media feeds. The Crane family exposed. 150 years of crime and corruption laid bare for the world to see. Senator William Crane was arrested on 27 charges, including murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and racketeering. His assets were frozen, his allies abandoned him, his legacy crumbled into dust. Nathan's role was mentioned, as Donovan had warned, but the coverage was surprisingly sympathetic. A soldier who had done terrible things, then spent decades trying to make amends. A father who had sacrificed everything to protect his daughter. A whistleblower who had risked his life to expose the truth. The FBI offered immunity, just as Donovan had predicted. In exchange for his testimony, Nathan would face no charges for his involvement in the Crane organization. For the first time in 35 years, he was free. They stayed at the hospital for another week while Nathan recovered. Jack visited every day, trading stories with his old friend, getting to know the young woman who had inherited Nathan's stubbornness. Emma came too, hesitantly at first, then more openly as Riley made it clear she was welcome. On the seventh day, the doctors pronounced Nathan well enough to travel. "Where do we go now?" Riley asked as they wheeled him toward the hospital exit. "The house I grew up in belongs to Aunt Martha. I do not have anywhere else." Nathan smiled. "I have been thinking about that. There is a cabin in the mountains. Nothing fancy, but it is private, quiet, a good place to heal." "The cabin where you have been hiding?" "No, a different one I bought years ago under a fake name. I always thought—" He paused, emotion flickering across his face. "I always thought that someday, if things ever worked out, you and I could live there together. Start over. Be a real family." Riley felt tears threatening again. "That sounds perfect." Ranger barked his agreement. And so on a sunny afternoon in late autumn, Riley Dawson left the hospital with her father at her side. They drove into the mountains toward a cabin she had never seen, toward a future she had never dared to imagine. The nightmare was over, and the rest of their lives was just beginning. The cabin sat at the end of a winding dirt road that climbed for 3 miles into the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was smaller than Riley had imagined, a single-story structure of weathered logs and fieldstone, with a covered porch that looked out over a valley so beautiful it seemed painted rather than real. Smoke curled from a stone chimney into the crisp autumn air. Window boxes held the last stubborn flowers of the season, refusing to surrender to the coming cold. Nathan had bought this place 12 years ago, using money he had saved from odd jobs and careful living. Had paid cash under a name that did not exist, for a deed that would never be traced. Had spent his rare free moments making it habitable, preparing it for a day he was never sure would come. A day when he could bring his daughter home. Riley stood on the porch, looking out at the mountains, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 2 weeks. The forest, the chase, the revelations about her father, the final confrontation with Crane. It felt like a lifetime ago. It felt like yesterday. Ranger explored the property with enthusiastic curiosity, his tail wagging as he discovered new smells and sounds. The dog had been through as much as any of them, but he seemed to have already moved on, living in the present the way only animals can. Riley envied him that ability. "What do you think?" Nathan had come out onto the porch, moving slowly, still recovering from his surgery. He leaned against the railing, watching her face with an expression of nervous hope. "It is beautiful," Riley said. "Really beautiful. I always thought you would like it." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I used to come here sometimes, when things got too hard. When I could not stand being so close to you and so far away at the same time. I would sit on this porch and imagine what it would be like if you were here with me." Riley felt her throat tighten. "And now I am. And now you are." Nathan smiled, a real smile that lit up his whole face despite the pain lines around his eyes. "It does not feel real yet. I keep expecting to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It is real." Riley moved to stand beside him, leaning against his shoulder. "We are real. This is real." They stood together in silence, watching the sun sink toward the western ridges, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. For the first time in 15 years, neither of them was alone. The first week was an adjustment. Riley had spent her entire conscious life without a father, had learned to navigate the world on her own, to depend only on herself, to expect nothing from anyone. Having Nathan there present and engaged and genuinely interested in her life felt strange. Wonderful, but strange. They developed routines. Morning coffee on the porch, watching the mist rise from the valley below. Simple meals prepared together in the small kitchen. Long walks in the forest with Ranger, Nathan gradually building his strength back up. Riley learning the land that surrounded their new home. And talking. Hours upon hours of talking. Nathan told her about his life before she was born, about growing up poor in rural Kentucky, about joining the army to escape poverty, about being recruited into special operations because of his scores on aptitude tests. He told her about the things he had done for the Cranes, not sparing himself, not making excuses. He wanted her to know the truth, all of it. She could decide for herself what kind of man her father really was. Riley listened without judgment. She was not naive enough to believe that knowing the facts would erase the horror of what he had done. But she had also seen the man he had become, the man who had sacrificed everything to protect her, the man who had spent 15 years trying to make amends. People were not static. They grew. They changed. They earned redemption, one choice at a time. "Do you regret it?" she asked one evening as they sat by the fire. "Taking the evidence? Running?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment. The flames cast dancing shadows across his face, highlighting the lines that 35 years of guilt and fear had carved there. "I regret a lot of things," he said finally. "I regret the people I hurt before I woke up. I regret leaving your mother to raise you alone. I regret every birthday I watched from a distance, every tear I could not wipe away, every moment you needed me and I was not there." He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "But I do not regret taking that evidence. The Cranes were monsters, Riley, not cartoon villains, but real monsters. The kind that wear suits and smile at cameras and destroy lives without ever getting their hands dirty. Someone had to stop them. If I had not taken those documents, they would still be out there, still hurting people, still building their empire on blood and secrets. So it was worth it? Everything you sacrificed?" Nathan reached out and took her hand. "Look at me, Riley, really look. I am sitting in a cabin in the mountains with my daughter who I thought I would never get to know, who I thought I would only ever watch from a distance. After everything I did, after all the pain I caused, I get to have this. I get to be your father." His voice cracked. "I do not deserve this, but I am grateful for it every single second. So yes, it was worth it, all of it, because it led me here." Mason. Jack Thornton came to see them at the end of the first week. He drove up in a battered pickup truck that looked almost as old as he was, carrying supplies and news and the particular kind of friendship that only decades of shared experience can create. Riley watched from the porch as the two men embraced. Jack was careful of Nathan's still healing wound, but there was nothing careful about the emotion in that moment. Two old soldiers, reunited after yet another near-death experience. "You look better," Jack said, holding Nathan at arm's length to study his face. "Still too skinny, but better." "Blame Riley's cooking. She is trying to fatten me up." "Good, you could use some fattening." Jack turned to Riley, his scarred face softening. "And you? How are you holding up?" "I am okay. Better than okay, actually." Riley smiled. "It is strange being here with him. Good strange, but still strange. Give it time. You two have 15 years of catching up to do. That does not happen overnight." Jack stayed for 3 days. He and Nathan spent hours talking, sometimes including Riley, sometimes retreating into private conversations that she understood were not for her ears. There was history between these men that she could only glimpse, shared experiences that had bonded them together more tightly than brothers. On his last night, Jack found Riley alone on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "He talks about you constantly," Jack said, settling into the chair beside her. "Has for years. Even when he could not see you, could not be near you, you were all he thought about." "I know." Riley did not look away from the stars. "He showed me his journals, the ones he kept during all those years of hiding. Then you know how much he loves you." "I know." She finally turned to face him. "Jack, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "What was he like before, when you first met him, before everything went wrong?" Jack was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant with memory. "He was young, idealistic in his own way, believed in the mission, believed in our commanders, believed he was serving a higher purpose." Jack shook his head slowly. "We were both so naive, thought we were heroes. Took us years to realize we were just weapons, being pointed at targets chosen by men who did not care about right or wrong." "When did it change for him?" "There was a mission. I will not give you the details. They would not help anyone at this point. But Nathan was ordered to do something that crossed a line even he could not justify. Something that made him look in the mirror and hate what he saw." Jack's voice grew heavy. "That was when he started asking questions. started looking into what we were really doing, who we were really serving. And when he found those documents in the cave, when he saw the full scope of what the Cranes had built, something broke inside of him, or maybe something finally healed. I have never been sure which. He chose to fight back. He chose to try to make things right, knowing it would cost him everything, knowing he might die, knowing once you came along that he might lose the one thing he loved most in the world. Jack looked at her with something like admiration. Your father is not a perfect man, Riley. He has done terrible things, but he is the bravest person I have ever known, and I am proud to call him my friend. Emma came to visit 3 weeks after they moved into the cabin. Riley was not sure how to feel when she saw her cousin's car coming up the winding road. The betrayal still stung, even after everything that had happened, even after Emma's last-minute change of heart. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. But she had promised to give Emma a second chance, and Riley Dawson kept her promises. They walked together through the forest, leaving Nathan and Ranger at the cabin. The autumn leaves crunched under their feet, red and gold and brown, painting the ground in nature's final burst of color before winter. I met with the FBI again yesterday, Emma said. They want me to testify at Crane's trial. Are you going to? Yes, I owe it to... She paused, struggling with words. I owe it to everyone. To you. To your father. To all the people Crane hurt because I helped him. Riley nodded but did not respond. I know you are still angry, Emma continued. You have every right to be. What I did was unforgivable. I told myself I was just passing along information, that I was not really hurting anyone, but that was a lie. I knew what Crane was. I knew what he would do with what I gave him. Then why did you do it? Emma stopped walking. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I wanted to matter. Because I was so tired of being invisible, of being the cousin nobody noticed, of feeling like I was just taking up space. When Crane's people approached me, they made me feel special, important, like I was part of something bigger than myself. She looked at Riley with tears in her eyes. That does not make it okay, I know that. But it is the truth. I was so desperate to be seen that I did not care who I hurt. Riley stood in silence, watching the emotions play across her cousin's face. She remembered her own years of feeling invisible, of believing she was unwanted, unloved, not worth staying for. If someone had come to her during those dark times offering attention and validation, would she have been strong enough to refuse? She wanted to say yes, but she was not sure. I forgive you, Riley said finally. Emma's head snapped up. What? I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger will only hurt me. Riley stepped closer, taking her cousin's hands. We both made choices based on feeling invisible. You chose to help Crane. I chose to believe I was unlovable. Neither choice was right, but we both have the chance to do better now. I do not deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, but I am giving it anyway. Riley squeezed her hands. That is how forgiveness works, Emma. It is not about deserving. It is about choosing to let go. Emma broke down crying. Riley held her there in the autumn forest as her cousin sobbed out years of shame and guilt and self-loathing. When Emma finally pulled back, wiping her eyes, something had changed in her face, a lightness that had not been there before. Thank you, she whispered. You are family, Riley said simply. Family forgives. The trial of Senator William Crane began in January. It was the biggest legal event in years. Media from around the world descended on the federal courthouse in Charlotte, transforming the streets into a circus of cameras and reporters and protesters. The Crane family's crimes had captured the public imagination in a way that few stories ever did. Riley attended every day. She sat in the gallery with Nathan and Jack, watching as prosecutor after prosecutor laid out the evidence her father had spent 35 years gathering. Documents, photographs, recordings, witness testimony from people who had lived in fear of the Cranes for decades. And through it all, William Crane sat at the defense table, his face a mask of stone. He had pleaded not guilty to all charges. His lawyers were the best money could buy, attacking the evidence, questioning the witnesses, doing everything possible to create reasonable doubt. But the evidence was overwhelming. On the fifth day, Nathan took the stand. Riley watched her father walk to the witness box, his movements still careful, his body still recovering. He looked older than his years, the weight of his past etched into every line of his face. But his voice was strong as he took the oath. And when he began to testify, telling the story of what he had seen and done and discovered, the courtroom fell absolutely silent. He spared nothing. Not the crimes he had committed in service of the Cranes, not the horrors he had witnessed, not the guilt that had driven him to steal the evidence and spend 35 years running. At one point, his eyes found Riley in the gallery. She nodded to him, a small gesture of support, and saw some of the tension leave his shoulders. He was not alone anymore, and that made all the difference. When Nathan finished his testimony, when the defense had exhausted its cross-examination, the prosecutor asked one final question. Mr. Dawson, after everything you went through, everything you sacrificed, was it worth it? Nathan looked directly at William Crane. I destroyed my own life trying to expose the truth. Lost my wife, lost 15 years with my daughter, lived as a fugitive in my own country, and I would do it all again without hesitation. Because some things are more important than personal comfort. Some things are worth any price. He turned back to the prosecutor. The Cranes built their empire on suffering, on broken lives and stolen dreams. Someone had to make them answer for that. I wish it had not been me. I wish I had been strong enough to refuse their orders from the beginning. But since I was not, the least I could do was try to make things right. The courtroom was silent, and in that silence, Riley saw something flicker across William Crane's face. Recognition of defeat, of the end of everything he had spent his life defending. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing took place 2 weeks later. William Crane was given 4 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. He would die in federal prison, his family's legacy destroyed, his empire reduced to rubble. Riley watched them lead him away in handcuffs. He looked at her as he passed. Their eyes met for a single moment. She expected to see hatred there, or rage, or the burning desire for revenge that had driven him for 35 years. Instead, she saw exhaustion. It is over, he said quietly. All of it. Everything my father built. Everything I sacrificed. Gone. Riley did not respond. There was nothing to say. Crane was led through the door, and it closed behind him with a sound of absolute finality. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Nathan stood beside Riley, his arm around her shoulders, facing the chaos together. How do you feel? One reporter demanded, shoving a microphone in Nathan's face. Nathan considered the question for a long moment. I feel tired, he said finally. I have been fighting this fight for 35 years. Watching it end is... I do not have words for what it is. What will you do now? Nathan looked at Riley. She looked back at him, and they both smiled. We are going to go home, Nathan said, and we are going to start living. Winter passed slowly in the mountains. Snow blanketed the valleys and ridges, transforming the landscape into a world of white silence. Riley and Nathan settled into their new life, building routines, learning each other's habits and preferences and quirks. It was not always easy. They were strangers in many ways, despite the blood between them. Nathan had difficulty adjusting to having another person in his space after so many years alone. Riley sometimes chafed at having a parent suddenly involved in her decisions after so long without one. They argued, they misunderstood each other. They said things they did not mean and had to apologize. But they also laughed, shared meals, told stories, went for walks with Ranger in the snow-covered forest. Slowly, awkwardly, beautifully, they became a family. Jack visited regularly, bringing news from the outside world and the particular brand of dry humor that only he could provide. Emma came too, working on rebuilding her relationship with Riley, proving through consistent action that she had truly changed. And as winter gave way to spring, as the snow melted and the first green shoots pushed through the earth, something else began to grow. Hope. Riley felt it most strongly on the morning of her 16th birthday. She woke to the smell of pancakes cooking and the sound of Nathan moving around in the kitchen. Ranger was already awake, his tail thumping against her bedroom door in anticipation of whatever treats the day might bring. She lay in bed for a moment, just breathing, just being. 1 year ago, she had been living with Aunt Martha, believing herself unloved and unwanted. She had spent her birthday alone in her room, trying not to cry, wondering what was wrong with her that made everyone leave. Now she had a father who cooked her pancakes, a dog who loved her unconditionally, a future that was not defined by abandonment and loss. Riley, Nathan's voice called from the kitchen. Breakfast is ready. She got up, pulled on a robe, and went to meet the day.
Antitetamos.
The kitchen table was decorated with streamers and balloons. They were slightly crooked, clearly hung by someone who did not have much experience with birthday decorations. But the effort behind them made Riley's heart swell. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Nathan stood by the stove, spatula in hand, looking slightly nervous. "I hope I got the pancakes right. Your mother used to make them with blueberries. But I could not remember if you liked blueberries. So I made two batches, one with and one without. And I probably should have just asked, but I wanted it to be a surprise, and now I am rambling, aren't I?" Riley laughed, a genuine laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. "The pancakes are perfect, Dad." It was the first time she had called him Dad so naturally. Not as a statement or a question, but just as a word, a name, what he was to her now. Nathan's eyes went bright with tears. "I have something for you," he said, his voice rough. "Wait here." He disappeared into his bedroom and returned carrying a wooden box, old and worn, its surface carved with intricate patterns. Riley recognized it immediately. "That is from the cabin, the tree cabin where I found the gold. Jack rescued it before Crane's men could take it." Nathan set the box on the table. "I wanted you to have it. Not the gold, that is the evidence now. Probably will be for years. But there were other things inside, things I have been keeping for you since you were born." Riley opened the box. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Riley as a baby, held in her mother's arms. Riley taking her first steps. Riley on her first day of school, her second day, her third. Every moment Nathan had watched from a distance, documented and preserved. And beneath the photographs, a stack of letters, addressed to Riley, never sent. One for every birthday she had ever had. "I wrote to you every year," Nathan said quietly. "Told you what was happening in my life. Asked you questions I knew you could not answer. It was my way of staying connected to you, even when we were apart." Riley picked up the first letter, dated on her first birthday. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. "My darling daughter," it began. "You are 1 year old today. I wish more than anything that I could be there to celebrate with you. But if I came, bad people would find us, and I could never let anything happen to you. So I will celebrate from a distance, watching you through windows, loving you with every beat of my heart." She could not finish reading. The tears were falling too fast. Nathan came around the table and put his arms around her. She leaned into him, sobbing, clutching the letter like a lifeline. "I miss so much," Nathan whispered into her hair. "I can never get those years back. But I promise you, Riley, I promise with everything I am, I will never miss another moment. From now on, I am here. For every birthday, every graduation, every triumph and heartbreak. Whatever happens, I am not leaving again." Riley looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby girl. Happy birthday." That summer, Riley started working on something new. She had been writing in a journal for months, documenting everything that had happened since that terrible morning in the forest. The discovery of the cabin, meeting Jack, learning the truth about her father, the confrontation with Crane. But as the pages accumulated, she realized she was not just writing for herself. She was writing for everyone who had ever felt abandoned, everyone who had ever believed they were unworthy of love, everyone who had ever looked in the mirror and wondered what was wrong with them that made people leave. She wanted them to know that they were not alone, that sometimes the people who leave are trying to protect us, even when their methods cause pain, that families can be rebuilt, trust can be restored, love can survive even 15 years of separation. Nathan found her on the porch one evening, laptop open, typing furiously. "What are you working on?" Riley hesitated. "I am not sure yet. A memoir, maybe, or something like one." "About us?" "About everything. The Cranes, the evidence, the chase through the mountains, but also about the years before, what it was like growing up thinking I was unwanted, how that changed when I learned the truth." Nathan sat down beside her, studying her face. "That is a lot to share with the world." "I know, but I think it might help people." Riley closed the laptop. "All those years, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. Invisible, unlovable. It was not until I found you, until I understood why you left, that I realized how wrong I was." She looked out at the mountains, now green with summer growth. "There are other kids out there right now who feel the same way I did. Kids who think they are worthless because someone left them. Kids who are being eaten alive by pain they do not know how to process. And you want to help them. I want to tell them the truth, that feelings lie sometimes. That the stories we tell ourselves about why people leave are often wrong, that they are worthy of love even when they cannot feel it. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Your mother would be so proud of you, he said finally. So incredibly proud. Riley felt tears prick at her eyes. Tell me about her. Tell me something I do not know. And Nathan did. He talked until the stars came out, sharing memories of the woman he had loved, the woman who had given him the greatest gift of his life. Riley listened and remembered, and felt her mother's presence in the stories like a warm embrace. Autumn came again to the Blue Ridge Mountains. 1 full year since Riley had been abandoned in the forest. 1 full year since her life had changed forever. She stood on the porch of the cabin, watching the leaves change color, thinking about everything that had happened since that terrible morning. So much had been lost. Her mother, who she would never see again. Her childhood innocence, stripped away by violence and fear. The years she and Nathan could have had together, stolen by circumstances neither of them chose. But so much had been gained too. A father who loved her, a home where she was wanted, a sense of purpose born from surviving impossible odds. A future that was hers to shape. Ranger lay at her feet, his muzzle gray now, age catching up with him the way it caught up with everyone. But his eyes were still bright, still full of the unconditional love that had sustained her through the darkest times. Good boy, she murmured, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. You saved my life, you know that. Back in the clearing, when you attacked Crane, you saved all of us. The dog's tail thumped against the wooden planks. Nathan came out onto the porch, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He moved easily now, fully healed from his wound, stronger than he had been in years. Purpose had done that, Jack said, having something to live for. Jack called, Nathan said, handing her a cup. He is bringing a turkey for Thanksgiving. Says he does not trust my cooking. Riley smiled. He is not wrong. Hey, I am getting better. Nathan settled into the chair beside her. Remember that casserole last week? The one that caught fire? It was just a little fire, and the smoke alarm working was actually a good thing. They laughed together, the easy laughter of people who had been through hell and come out the other side. I have been thinking, Nathan said, his voice growing serious, about what comes next. For both of us. What do you mean? You are 16 now. In 2 years, you will be an adult. You could go to college, start a career, build a life somewhere far from these mountains. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I do not want you to feel like you have to stay here, like you owe me anything. Riley set down her coffee cup. Dad, I spent 15 years thinking I was alone, thinking no one wanted me, and now I have you. I have this place, I have a life that actually feels worth living. She reached over and took his hand. I am not going anywhere, not because I owe you, but because this is where I want to be. Nathan's eyes glistened. I do not deserve you, Riley. Maybe not, but you are stuck with me anyway. She squeezed his hand. That is what family does. We stick together, no matter what. The book came out the following spring. Riley had titled it The Forest Calls Her Name, after the strange pull she had felt toward the cabin that first day. The instinct that had led her to her father's secrets and ultimately to her father himself. It was published by a small press that specialized in memoirs and personal stories. The advance was modest, the print run limited. Riley had not expected it to be anything more than a quiet release, read by a few people who happened to find it interesting. She was wrong. The story caught fire. Maybe it was the connection to the Crane trial, which was still making news as various family members faced their own charges. Maybe it was the father-daughter reunion angle, which resonated with people who had their own complicated relationships. Maybe it was simply that Riley had told the truth, raw and unfiltered, and truth has a power that fiction can never match. Within months, the book had sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Riley was invited onto talk shows, interviewed by magazines, asked to speak at conferences about resilience and family and the nature of forgiveness. Through it all, Nathan stayed in the background. He was proud of her, fiercely proud, but he had no desire for the spotlight. His days of being at the center of attention were over. Now he was content to be Riley's father, to support her from the shadows the way he had for so many years. But occasionally, when an interviewer asked Riley about him, she would share stories about his sacrifices, his regrets, his unwavering love for a daughter he had never stopped protecting. And slowly in the public imagination, Nathan Dawson transformed from a footnote in the Crane scandal to something more, a symbol of redemption, proof that even people who have done terrible things can find their way back to the light. How does it feel? Jack asked one evening, watching a news segment about Riley's book, Being Famous. Riley shrugged. Strange. I did not write it to become famous. I wrote it to help people who felt the way I used to feel. Is it helping? She thought about the letters that arrived every day, hundreds of them, from people all over the country. Kids who had grown up thinking they were unlovable. Adults still carrying wounds from childhood abandonment. Parents who had made mistakes and wanted to make amends. I think so, she said. I hope so. Nathan came in from the kitchen, carrying plates of dinner. He had gotten better at cooking over the past year, though his repertoire was still limited. Less talking, more eating, he said, setting the plates down. This chicken took me 3 hours. It looks like it took 3 hours, Jack observed. That is either a compliment or an insult, and I choose to take it as a compliment. They ate together, the three of them plus Ranger, who had earned a permanent spot at the table through years of loyalty and love. Outside, the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in the colors of endings and beginnings. This was Riley's life now. This mismatched family, this cabin in the mountains, this ongoing project of healing and growth. It was not the life she had imagined as a child, not the life she had expected or planned, but it was hers, and it was good. On the second anniversary of her journey through the forest, Riley hiked back to the tree cabin. Nathan came with her, moving slowly but steadily up the mountain paths. The cabin was still there, though weathered now, neglected since the FBI had finished their evidence gathering. The rope ladder had rotted away, but someone had left an aluminum replacement. They climbed up together and sat on the floor where Riley had first found the gold, first met Jack, first begun to understand the truth about her father. I was so scared that day, Riley said quietly. So lost, I thought I was going to die out here. But you did not, because you were watching over me, even when I did not know it. Nathan nodded slowly. I almost revealed myself that day, you know. When you found the cabin, I was nearby, watching, and when I saw you climb up, I almost came out of hiding. 15 years of discipline almost broke in a single moment. Why did you not? Because I knew if I did, Crane would know exactly where you were, and I could not let that happen. He paused. So I sent Jack instead. Trusted him to protect you until I could figure out a better plan. Riley thought about all the choices her father had made, all the sacrifices, all the pain he had endured, year after year, to keep her safe from a threat she did not even know existed. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. If you could go back and do it all over again, knowing everything you know now, would you make the same choices? Nathan was quiet for a long time. The forest around them hummed with life, birds calling, leaves rustling, the eternal pulse of nature that had witnessed so much human drama and would witness so much more. No, he said finally. If I could go back, I would have found another way. A way to protect you without leaving. A way to be your father while still keeping you safe. He looked at her with eyes full of regret. I told myself there was no other option, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I just chose the option that was easiest for me, the one that let me run instead of fight. You did what you thought was right. I did what I thought it was necessary. That is not always the same thing. Nathan took her hand. Riley, I want you to understand something. My choices are not your template. The sacrifices I made, the isolation I accepted, that is not a blueprint for how to live. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to choose between protecting someone and being present for them, try harder than I did to find a third option. I will. And remember that love is not just about keeping people safe. It is about being there, showing up, doing the hard work of relationship, day after day, even when it is messy and complicated and painful. He squeezed her hand. I failed at that for 15 years. I am trying to do better now. And I want you to learn from my mistakes, not repeat them. Riley leaned against her father's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his presence, the steady rhythm of his breathing. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Riley, more than you will ever know.
Mom.
They left the cabin as the sun began to set, making their way down the mountain path toward home. Ranger bounded ahead of them, still energetic despite his age, still filled with the joy of simply being alive. The autumn leaves crunched under their feet, red and gold and brown, nature's reminder that endings and beginnings were often the same thing. Riley thought about everything that had happened since that morning 2 years ago. The terror, the revelations, the healing, the growth. She was not the same person who had been abandoned in this forest. That girl had been broken, lonely, convinced of her own worthlessness. This woman, the one walking beside her father toward a home filled with love, was something new. Not unbroken, the cracks were still there, still visible if you knew where to look, but mended, strengthened, transformed by fire into something more resilient than before. "Dad," she said as they reached the final stretch of trail, "thank you." Nathan looked at her surprised. "For what?" "For never giving up, for watching over me all those years, for coming back when I needed you most." She smiled. "For being my father even when you could not be there." Nathan stopped walking, turned to face her fully. In the fading light, his face was a map of everything they had been through together. "Riley, you are the best thing I ever did. Not the evidence, not exposing the cranes, not any of the things the world wants to celebrate me for. You. You are my legacy, my redemption, the proof that even a man like me can create something beautiful." They embraced there on the trail, father and daughter, holding each other as the sun sank below the mountains and the first stars emerged in the darkening sky. And when they finally let go, when they continued down the path toward the cabin, where Ranger was waiting and dinner needed to be made and life in all its ordinary beauty needed to be lived, Riley felt something she had not felt in years. Peace, not the absence of pain or the erasure of the past, but the deep, abiding certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, that she was loved, that she belonged. The forest had called her name, and she had answered. And in answering, she had found her way home. Home for him. 5 years later, Riley Dawson stood at a podium in a packed auditorium, looking out at a sea of faces. They had come from all over the country to hear her speak. Parents who had made mistakes, children who had felt abandoned, families trying to heal from wounds that seemed impossible to survive. Behind her, a banner proclaimed the name of the organization she had founded, Second Chances. In the front row sat Nathan, his hair fully gray now, his face lined but peaceful. Jack was beside him, as always, the friendship between the two men having only grown stronger over the years. Emma was there too, having become a counselor specializing in family reconciliation. And at Riley's feet, too old now to bound but still faithfully present, lay Ranger, the dog who had found his way back to her when she needed him most. "I spent 15 years believing I was unworthy of love," Riley said, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. "Believing that when people left, it was because something was wrong with me. It took almost dying in a forest, finding a father I thought had abandoned me, and watching the walls between us slowly come down to understand the truth." She paused, letting the words settle. "The truth is that love is complicated, messy, often painful. Sometimes the people who love us most hurt us the deepest, not because they do not care, but because caring makes everything harder." She looked at Nathan. He smiled at her, his eyes bright with pride. "But the truth is also that healing is possible, that families can be rebuilt, that the walls we construct to protect ourselves can also become prisons. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tear them down." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to something more intimate. "If you are sitting here today carrying wounds from your past, I want you to know that you are not alone. I want you to know that your pain is valid, that your feelings matter, that the stories you have told yourself about why people left might not be the whole truth. And I want you to know that it is not too late to heal, not too late to forgive, not too late to reach out to someone you have lost and try to build a bridge back to each other." She straightened up, her voice strengthening. "The forest called my name. It led me through darkness and fear and pain to the truth I needed to find. Your forest is calling too. Will you answer? Will you?" The auditorium erupted in applause. Riley smiled, stepped back from the podium, and walked toward her father. He stood to meet her, his arms open wide. And in his embrace, surrounded by people who had come seeking hope, Riley Dawson finally understood what her journey had been about all along. Not revenge against the Cranes, not justice for the crimes of the past, but love. Simple, complicated, painful, beautiful love. The kind that survives 15 years of separation. The kind that crosses mountains and faces down enemies and never, ever gives up. The kind that calls you home.